Chapter 10:18. On the vast desolate plains of the state of Heavenly Tomb, a shocking battle was about to erupt. Looking around, there were densely packed creatures all over the ground like a colony of ants. On the side of the 5 royal families, there weren't many creatures, only 200,000 or so. However, there was a cruel sneer on each of their faces. It was a cruel expression of seeing prey. To them, this battle was nothing more than a massacre. As for the alliance of fate of the slave clans, although the number of creatures was dozens of times more than the 5 royal families' army, however, many living beings were nervous and worried. Even the patriarchs of the various clans were as pale as paper, feeling uneasy. At first glance, it looked like the alliance of fate's army had surrounded the 5 royal families' army. However, it was actually the 5 royal families' army that had surrounded the alliance of fate's army. This was because the battle strength of both sides was not on the same level at all. On the side of the 5 royal families, 5 figures appeared in the air. They were the prodigies of the 5 royal families. Among them was the blood spirit saintess. She glanced at the alliance of fate's army with a hint of ridicule and disdain in her eyes. In her eyes, the millions of slave clans were just fish on the chopping board. However, she still shouted coldly, "Where is your saint? Where is he? Tell him to come out." On the side of the alliance of fate, Tuoba Yu, Tuoba Lan, and the others walked out. Tuoba Yu looked at the 5 royal families' army with a frown. 7 days. Have you considered it? The blood spirit saintess said indifferently. That's impossible. Tuoba Yu said resolutely. He had vaguely guessed it. Even if they surrendered, they probably wouldn't have a good ending. Sigh. It seems that the Emperor's kindness is unnecessary. The blood spirit saintess sighed slightly. I told you earlier to just kill them all. The Blade Arm Shura clan prodigy snorted coldly, overflowing with killing intent. Hearing their words, Tuoba Yu and some of the patriarch's pupils constricted slightly. Emperor? They knew very well what this title meant. It was the title of the top prodigies of the immortal emperor race. The big shot behind the 5 royal families was actually an emperor. This caused the expressions of the slave clan's patriarchs to change drastically. In their eyes, the immortal emperor clans were no different from gods. Seeing the reaction of this group of people, a mocking smile appeared in the eyes of the blood spirit saintess. You'd rather die than submit, but that doesn't mean others are the same. Now, I'll give you a chance. The saintess of blood spirit smiled charmingly. He looked like he was watching a show. One had to admit that they did have some tricks up their sleeves. Even at the critical juncture of the war, he did not forget to sow discord. Tuoba Yu didn't say anything. It was a good opportunity for him to test who was absolutely loyal to the god of fate and creation, and who was fishing in troubled waters. All of a sudden, the Odd Mist tribe's patriarch shouted, "I'm willing to surrender." Patriarch Chi Lan, you. Tuoba Lan's beautiful eyes widened in anger. Sister, don't say any more. Tuoba Yu waved his hand and coldly stared at Patriarch Chi Lan. He led the entire Mystic Mist clan to surrender. Obviously, this was something that had been discussed beforehand. My Birdman race is also willing to surrender. Another chief shouted. Subsequently, the leaders of the slave clans successively surrendered. In the end, there were hundreds of slave clans and millions of slave clans that surrendered. All of a sudden, the strength of the alliance of fate was severely weakened again. Hehe, interesting. Your so-called faith is too fragile. What god of fate and creation? Now it seems that you're really a clown. The saintess of blood spirit mocked without hiding her ridicule. Gods cannot be insulted. Tuoba Yu raised his eyebrows, and a cold light burst out from his eyes. It was the god of fate and creation who changed his fate. It allowed him to grow from a slave clan youth to the current holy hero that was revered by tens of thousands of people. He would not allow anyone to insult the god of fate and creation. Kill. Tuoba Yu ordered. The remaining slave clan army roared and rushed out. Their faith was firm and unshakable, even surpassing life and death, so they were not afraid at all. Ridiculous ants, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The Emperor's mission must be completed. The saintess of blood spirit narrowed her beautiful eyes. As long as she could please the god-devourer emperor's son, even if it was just becoming a concubine. For her, it was a great benefit. The entire blood spirit royal family could benefit because of this. The alliance army of the 5 royal clans also made their move. They were mighty. Although their numbers were not as good as the slave clan alliance, their battle strength was shocking. Very soon, it was only a few rounds of charging and killing. More than 100,000 people from the slave clan were killed or injured. Many slave clan creatures were wailing as they fell into pools of blood. The mystic venerables and divine venerables of the royal clan had yet to make their move. Otherwise, the casualties would be even more terrifying. From the looks of it, the battle can be resolved in less than a day. The Blade Arm Azura clan prodigy sneered. When all the slave clan creatures here were killed, the god-devourer emperor's son could use the blood energy of thousands of resentful spirits to refine his divine weapon, the god-devourer ring. Once the matter is done, our 5 royal clans can all ascend. The young prodigy of the Blue Ghost royal clan revealed a cruel smile. In their opinion, the only value of these millions of creatures was to let their clans ascend. As the battle progressed, hundreds of thousands of slave clan creatures had already fallen. A sorrowful atmosphere filled the air. Great God of fate and creation, please save us. Great God, I pray to you. Behind them, some old, weak, women, and children of the slave clan were praying with red eyes. Their husbands and sons were lying in pools of blood. The eyes of the slave clan creatures were filled with despair. Why is it like this? Tuobaland's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. She was incomparably sorrowful. It was not easy for them to establish the alliance of fate. Was it going to fall apart just like that? Tuoba Yu also clenched his fists tightly. Although he had the cultivation of a sacred lord. But in the face of a battle of this level, he was still helpless. Not to mention the true big shots of the royal clan. The mystic venerables and divine venerables had yet to make their move. There was an even more terrifying emperor-level figure behind them. Right now, Tuoba Yu had no other good ideas other than praying to the god of fate and creation. Just as the entire battle was about to turn into a one-sided massacre. Suddenly, 2 figures tore through the void and walked out. One of them had a ghost mask on his face and was dressed in white. The other was dressed in a smoky long dress with a veil covering her face. It was Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling. The reason Luo Xiangling had a veil covering her face was because she was too beautiful. Wherever she went, she would attract attention. Therefore, she wore a veil to block out the gaze. Stop. An indifferent voice came out of Jun Xiaoyao's mouth. It was as if there was a strange magic that poured into people's minds. The entire battlefield instantly quieted down. The eyes of the blood spirit saintess and the others immediately fell on Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling. The 2 of them restrained their laws and did not leak out the slightest bit of aura. You are. The blood spirit saintess and the other royal clan prodigies frowned slightly. Jun Xiaoyaro did not look at them immediately. Instead, he looked at the traitors who had betrayed the alliance of fate and brandished their blades at their own people. Traitors are more disgusting than enemies. Jun Xiaoyaro slowly raised his hand and then snapped his fingers. Poochie. The traitors of the Strange Mist clan, the Birdmen clan, and the other traitors added up to millions of lives. In an instant, their bodies exploded and turned into ashes. This move instantly caused the entire battlefield to fall into a deathly silence. Chapter 1019. What did they see? More than 1 million living beings. With a snap of his fingers, they turned into ashes. Even if these living beings were the most lowly slave race, they wouldn't be so fragile. Even if an utmost powerful being were to make a move, it would still take a few moves before he could kill all of them. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro snapped his fingers and killed 1 million living beings on the spot. This scene deeply shocked all the living beings present. Even the living beings on the 5 royal families' side had never seen such a terrifying method. All of them were dumbstruck, and their pupils constricted. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured down from the top of their heads. It was bone-chilling. The blood spirit saintess and the others also gasped, and their scalps went numb. Although they also regarded these slave races as ants. They never thought that they could kill 1,000,000 living beings with a snap of their fingers. What kind of earth-shattering method was this? In the face of the shock of the outsiders, Zhun Xiaoyao's expression was cold. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't even blink when he killed 1,000,000 living beings with a snap of his fingers. As long as he cultivated the Tao Heart demonic seed art, life and death were just between his thoughts. A snap of his fingers was unnecessary. On the side, Luo Xiangling was also a little surprised. She glanced at Zhun Xiaoyao. At first, she thought that she was on a date with Zhun Xiaoyao. In the end, when she came here, she knew. She had been used as a tool. However, Luo Xiangling didn't mind. She was still a little happy to be able to help Zhun Xiaoyao. Who are you? What do you want to do? The blood spirit saintess's expression became solemn. These slaves were the materials used by the God Devourer Emperor's son to refine the God Devourer ring. Now that they had lost 1,000,000, it would be terrible if they couldn't complete the mission. However, the masked man in front of her was indeed a little strange. She couldn't detect any aura at all. However, the blood spirit saintess's expression was still calm. Behind her stood Mystic Venerable, a supreme expert at the divine venerable level. At the very least, she still had the God Devourer Emperor's son to support her. In this foreign land, unless a big shot from the Ultimate Emperor clan appeared. Otherwise, no one would provoke the God Devourer Emperor's son. Most of the Ultimate Monarch tribe's living beings stayed in the Avacania lands. They wouldn't casually come to the 10 great states. Hee, you are targeting my people. Why do you still need to ask me? Zhun Xiaoyao laughed. These words caused the bodies of Tuoba Yu, Tuoba Lan, and the rest to tremble upon hearing them. Your people? The blood spirit saintess was even more confused. I am the divine envoy of the god of fate and creation. Zhun Xiaoyao directly revealed his identity. Now, he no longer needed to hide in the dark. With his status and influence, the spread of faith would be even more widespread. What? So that's the case. Tuoba Yu was so excited that his pupils were trembling. I knew that Lord God wouldn't abandon us. I'm Tuoba Yu. Greetings, God Emissary. Tuoba Yu knelt down on one knee before Zhun Xiaoyao. He wasn't being impulsive. Instead, it was the method that Zhun Xiaoyao had used to instantly wipe out 1,000,000 traitors. Only those who were related to the gods of fate and creation could use it. Greetings, God Emissary. Tuoba Lan also bowed. The rest of the slaves, after being stunned for a moment, also knelt down. When they were on the verge of despair, a glimmer of light appeared. There was no doubt that Zhun Xiaoyao was their salvation. Looking at the millions of creatures who knelt on the ground in an instant, Zhun Xiaoyao was very satisfied. Fishing in troubled waters, the traitors with disloyalty had already been screened out and killed. The rest of the people were definitely people who held a devout heart of faith. Such creatures were worthy of him personally coming to rescue. On the contrary, on the slave side, the blood spirit saintess and the others couldn't help but sneer. Hehe, interesting. I didn't expect the god of grass to have a divine envoy. The blood spirit saintess was really laughing very happily. The other royal prodigies also laughed out loud. Beside Zhun Xiaoyao, Luo Xiangling saw this scene and blinked slightly. If the blood spirit saintess knew the identity of the person she was laughing at, she would probably be so scared that she would pee her skirt, right? However, since Zhun Xiaoyao didn't say anything, she wouldn't say anything either. On the other side, after the blade arm Shura prodigy finished laughing, a hint of killing intent flashed across his eyes. Don't waste the Emperor's time. Kill him directly. The genius of the blade-armed Ashura clan made his move right away, bringing his blade-like arm down on Zhun Xiaoyao. The blood-red blade light cut through the sky. His cultivation was at the peak of the sacred Lord realm. Be careful, God Emissary. Tuoba Yu and the others couldn't help but change their expressions. However, Zhun Xiaoyao didn't move at all. He didn't even move his fingers. Only a ray of light was cast over. The power of his primordial spirit flowed in his eyes as if it had turned into 100 lives of tribulation. The divine ability of the past primordial spirit of the 3 lives, the reincarnation tribulation, This was the primordial spirit technique that Jun Xiaoyaro had comprehended in the Black Abyss Reincarnation Sea. Because of this, he had experienced 100 lives of karma with Ling Yang. The reincarnation tribulation could let the enemy's soul experience the reincarnation tribulation. If one's will was not strong enough, their primordial spirit might even collapse. What? What is this? The blade arm Shura prodigy suddenly stopped. Then, a crazy look appeared in his eyes. In just a few short breaths. Splat. The blade arm Shura prodigy's entire head exploded like a watermelon. Red and white matter splattered everywhere, and his primordial spirit was also destroyed. This time, everyone was stunned. This wasn't some minor character, but a peak Holy Lord powerhouse, as expected of the god emissary. Seeing this, Tuoba Yu was even more determined. Only the divine envoys of the god of fate and creation had such an ability to kill with a single glance. The blood spirit Saintus also felt a little creeped out. A snap of his fingers could kill millions of living beings, and a gaze could kill a peak sacred lord. What kind of ability was this? Most importantly, her cultivation was only at the sacred lord realm. Didn't that mean that the masked man opposite her could easily kill her? Thinking of this, the blood spirit Saintus felt a chill in her heart. She hurriedly turned her head and said, "Seniors, please attack." In the depths of the void behind the army, several figures appeared, bringing with them a terrifying nomological pressure. They were the mystique venerables and godly venerables of the 5 royal families. Supreme mystique venerables and creation divine venerables were definitely top-notch figures, even in the immortal emperor families. In the royal families, they were like patriarchs and leaders. At this moment, 2 creation divine venerables and 4 supreme mystique venerables appeared. Who dares to ruin the emperor's plans? A supreme mystique venerate shouted coldly with an arrogant attitude. He directly slapped toward Jun Xiaoyaro. The sky trembled, and the void was destroyed like paper. Just the power of a mystique venerate was enough to shake the world. God emissary. On the slave race's side, countless living beings trembled and prayed. Jun Xiaoyaro still did not move. Luo Xiangling, who was at the side, also flashed with indifferent killing intent in her watery eyes. Her personality was not bad, even a little pure. However, it was only limited to those who could enter her heart, which was Jun Xiaoyaro. As for the other living beings, Luo Xiangling returned to her cold indifference as a pseudo-immortal. Now, she saw that someone was trying to harm Jun Xiaoyaro. Luo Xiangling naturally would not remain indifferent. She reached out her hand, and her 5 slender fingers grabbed toward the void. In an instant, the space around that supreme mystique venerate began to shrink as if it was collapsing. That supreme mystique venerate was completely wrapped in it. His physical body was crushed, and even his primordial spirit could not escape. Luo Xiangling did not hold back. Her pseudo-immortal aura completely erupted. Like a supreme goddess, her fine black hair danced in the wind, and her aura shook the world. Before the other mystique venerables and godly venerables could change their expressions. The terrifying pseudo-immortal level law emerged in the void and turned into a mighty long river of law. Those mystique venerables and godly venerables were directly swept into the long river of laws. Their physical bodies and primordial spirits were crushed. No matter how they struggled, no matter how strong their supreme laws were, they could not resist, let alone escape. In just a short moment, the mystique venerables and godly venerables of the 5 royal families had all fallen. At this moment, dead silence covered the world, and the space seemed to have frozen. The blood spirit Saintus and the others trembled so much that their souls seemed to be about to split open. Chapter 1020. Supreme Mystic Master, Creation Hierarch. They were the top warriors of the royal family, ancestor level. But now, in just a short moment, they were all dead. It was like a mute switch was pressed between heaven and earth. There were clearly millions of living beings present. But no one made a sound. Blood spirit Saintus was so shocked that her scalp was about to explode. It was like every blood vessel was about to explode. The aura emitted by the unbelievably beautiful woman with a veil on her face. Although it wasn't as powerful as the immortal king, it wasn't far off. Quasi-immortal? Blood Spirit Saintess' teeth were chattering, her face was pale and bloodless. This wasn't like kicking an iron board, but a diamond drill. That aura, could it be a quasi-immortal? God, the woman beside Sir Messenger is a quasi-immortal. The slave races were in an uproar. Tuoba Yu took a deep breath, his face was filled with ecstasy. He originally thought that the performance of this Sir Messenger was already amazing enough. But the woman beside him was a quasi-immortal. A quasi-immortal followed him and attacked. Just 2 words. Impressive. This Sir Messenger, his background is too big. A quasi-immortal followed him and protected him. Tuobalan's beautiful eyes were wide open. This simply refreshed her worldview. You. Who are you? Blood Spirit Saintess was about to collapse. They just killed some lowly slave races. How did they provoke such a terrifying Buddha? Who I am isn't important. What's important is, how are you going to explain this? Jun Xiaoyaro slightly tilted his head, his tone was playful. He looked at Blood Spirit Saintess. Just like how Blood Spirit Saintess looked at those slave races. Cold, emotionless, and superior. Blood Spirit Saintess was extremely uncomfortable. She was a saintess of the royal family. When had she been looked down upon like this? But thinking that she still had a backer, she immediately calmed down. Quasi-immortal was terrifying. But facing the immortal emperor race, they should at least give some face, right? The one behind me is the God-Eater prince of the God-Eater clan. The saintess of the blood spirit race said calmly, we, the 5 royal bloodlines, followed his orders to encircle and annihilate these slave races. Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly understood. No wonder these royal families would target the slave races when they had nothing better to do. It turned out that he was following orders. God Devourer Emperor's son. Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. He had heard of it before. This was one of the foreign side's 7 little emperors. The true form of the God-Eater clan was an immemorial devil insect that was nearly extinct in the immortal domain, the God-Eater insect. This was one of the divine insects that was on par with the God-Fiend ant and the 10 transformations celestial silkworm. Moreover, it possessed a tyrannical devouring power. Devouring power, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. He did not forget that he still had a wisp of devouring immortal qi. The devouring immortal qi was refined by his devouring god demonic technique. Jun Xiaoyaro had already reached the Supreme Being realm. If he wanted to advance further, he would have to break through his realm. That was to condense even more supreme laws. The God Devourer Emperor's son had already condensed the devouring law. If Jun Xiaoyaro could obtain the devouring law from the God Devourer Emperor's son, he could comprehend and refine it. Not only could he quickly condense the devouring law, but he could also improve his devouring god demonic technique and integrate the characteristics of the God-Eater insect. By then, Jun Xiaoyaro could freely control the devouring power. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's silence, the blood spirit saintess mistakenly thought that he was afraid. She could not help but say faintly, since you already know who's behind me, you can leave now. The blood spirit saintess was not stupid. After all, there were quasi-immortal level existences on the other side. She could not ridicule them brainlessly. It was enough as long as they could leave. As for the fallen mystique venerables and hierarch venerables, that was not something a saintess like her could interfere with. No need. The master is already here. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled slightly and looked into the distance. A huge ship came crashing down from the sky. It was the God Devourer Emperor's ship. He was originally at the back, waiting for the 5 royal families to finish their battle before coming to harvest the fruits of their labor. However, he sensed a quasi-immortal level aura erupting. This surprised the God Devourer Emperor's son, so he came to check it out. May I know which senior is releasing this aura? I'm the God Devourer Emperor's son from the God Devourer clan. I hope senior can give me face. Inside the ship, a handsome man dressed in a loose robe with black hair that reached his ankles slowly walked out. His eyes were like 2 miniature black holes. They were so deep that they could not see the bottom. It was as if they could even suck in one's soul. It was the God Devourer Emperor's son. He looked at Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling with surprise in his pitch-black eyes. He sensed a dangerous aura. God Devourer Emperor's son, Who gave you the courage to touch my people? Jun Xiaoyaro did not hold back. Even if the God-Devourer Emperor's son took a step back, he would not hold back. This was a big gift to condense the law. How could he let it go? Jun Xiaoyao's attitude made the God-Devourer Emperor's son frown. Sir, who are you to talk to me in such a tone? Do you have the right to do so? The God-Devourer Emperor's son's tone had a hint of gunpowder. The blood spirit saintess, on the other hand, looked like she was watching a show. With the God-Devourer Emperor's son around, she seemed to have found her backbone. Her expression was no longer flustered, and her heart was no longer in a mess. Do you think I have the right to do so? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and took off the mask on his face. At the same time, the chaotic mist lingered around his body. Wisps of chaotic pressure collapsed the void. Numerous spatial cracks appeared. A supreme aura covered the entire place. Chaotic aura, you are. There was no need to look at Jun Xiaoyao's face. As long as one saw the chaotic aura and the supreme aura, his identity was as clear as day. You have the chaotic body. The God-Devourer Emperor's son's eyes were faintly shocked. Jun Xiaoyao's identity was really beyond his expectations. When the blood spirit saintess heard this, her mind buzzed as if 100,000 thunderbolts were rumbling. He is the war god of my world's younger generation, the chaotic body? The blood spirit saintess was a little confused, completely unable to recover from her shock. The chaotic body was something she had always admired and looked forward to. Jun Xiaoyao's battle record in the desolate border was killing more than 10 immortal domains seed prodigies by himself. He had even survived under the hands of a great emperor. This could be called a legendary deed, which made the blood spirit saintess yearn for it. However, she knew that her identity as the saintess of the royal family was as lowly as dust compared to Jun Xiaoyaro. It was not worth mentioning. But now, the person she had mocked was actually the person she admired the most in her heart. This made the blood spirit saintess somewhat unable to believe and accept. This is all a misunderstanding, I don't know. The blood spirit saintess was at a loss and wanted to explain. Jun Xiaoyaro did not say anything and simply looked at him with a faint gaze. No, don't. The blood spirit saintess turned pale with fright and turned to seek the protection of the God-Devourer Emperor. Emperor, save me! The blood spirit saintess shouted. However, the God-Devourer Emperor's expression was indifferent, and his gaze did not fall on her at all. The blood spirit saintess's face was full of despair and regret. Only then did she realize that she had always been a dispensable abandoned pawn. In the next moment, the blood spirit saintess's head exploded, and she died. Chapter 1021. It wasn't just the blood spirit saintess, but also the prodigies of the other royal families. Their heads exploded one by one, and they died. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally didn't have the slightest bit of pity for these people. They watched as the royal prodigies, who had been high and mighty and looked down on them like ants, died one after another. There was no need to mention just how pleased these enslaved beings were. As for Jun Xiaoyao's background, they were also very clear. This was because Jun Xiaoyaro was simply too famous in the foreign realm during this period of time. It could be said that he was as famous as some of the ultimate monarch race beings in the unspeakable lands. Even the lowly creatures of the slave race. They all knew that an unparalleled chaotic physique had appeared in their realm. The first heaven-defying figure to obtain a chance of survival in the hands of a great emperor as a supreme. Even Tuoba, you didn't expect this divine emissary to have such a powerful background. Divine emissary is actually that chaos war god. Tuoba Yu was so excited that his pupils trembled. The god of fate and creation was indeed heaven-defying. Even a random divine emissary had an unparalleled chaotic physique. I didn't expect divine emissary's true identity to be that unparalleled war god. Tuoba Land's beautiful eyes were also full of splendor. At this moment, the faith in the hearts of all the slaves became even more unwavering. In an instant, Jun Xiaoyaro sensed that in his inner universe, the power of faith had increased by a large amount. And it had become even purer than before. The corners of Jun Xiaoyao's mouth curled up slightly. This was the reason why he was willing to come here personally to rescue them. Otherwise, Zhang Xiaoyao couldn't be bothered to care about the lives of those slaves. Looking at the fallen blood spirit saintess and the others, the god-devourer prince didn't even blink. These royal creatures were just laborious that he had casually called over. If they died, they died. It had nothing to do with him. Since this person has a chaotic physique, then she should be the Luo king of the Ars Academy. The god-devourer prince looked at Luo Xiangling. His expression became extremely solemn. He knew that he had caused a lot of trouble today. Damn it, why would such a person come here and stand up for these slaves? The god-devourer prince couldn't understand. However, on the surface, he still put on a fake smile. I was wondering who it was. So it's the recently famous war god. You hurt my men. How do you want to settle this? Zhang Xiaoyao went straight to the point. What? The great lord battle god is related to these lowly slave races? The god-devourer prince asked calmly. So what if they're slaves? Aren't the lives of slaves their own lives? Besides, I'm the god's messenger of the god of fate and creation. I should care about their suffering. Zhang Xiaoyao spoke in a righteous manner. Sir Envoy. The eyes of Tuoba Yu, Tuoba Lan, and the patriarchs of the various tribes turned red. That high and mighty war god who even emperor clans had to bow down before actually cared for them like this. At this moment, the millions of enslaved beings were filled with devotion and worship toward Zhang Xiaoyao and the god of creation. Zhang Xiaoyao's acting skills could even make a quasi-immortal like Luo Xiangling fall for him. Not to mention deceiving these enslaved beings. However, Zhang Xiaoyao did save their lives, so it wasn't a complete lie. What you said. The god-devourer prince instinctively felt that something was wrong. This god who came out of nowhere actually had a god's messenger. And it was the famous Chaos War god. Just thinking about it made him feel that it was ridiculous and unbelievable. The god-devourer prince even vaguely felt that he was being cheated. He said vigilantly, in that case, for the sake of you and the Luo king, I'll spare those slaves. Compared to refining the god-devourer ring, Zhang Xiaoyao and the Luo king were even more untouchable. With that, the god-devourer prince turned to leave. Wait. Zhang Xiaoyao's voice rang out. Do you have anything else to say? The god-devourer prince said coldly. You want to leave after killing my men? Isn't that too easy? Zhang Xiaoyao said. The god-devourer prince was his resource. The devourer immortal qi in Zhang Xiaoyao's body was still stirring. How could he let this leak leave? Enough. Do you want to become my enemy for these lowly slaves? The god-devourer prince's supreme aura also erupted. He was afraid of Zhang Xiaoyao, but it didn't mean that he was a coward. As the arch-prince and one of the 7 lesser theches, did he not care about his reputation? Let me deal with him. Suddenly, a childish voice rang out. Oh! The god-devourer prince's eyes focused. In front of Zhang Xiaoyao, a purple gold ant about the size of a pinky appeared. Its body was golden, as if it was made of divine marks and purple gold. It was extremely dazzling. This is a god-fiend ant. The god-devourer prince's eyes glowed with a terrifying light beam. The god-fiend ant and the god-devourer bug were supreme bug races that had been passed down since the primordial era. There were even ancient legends that recorded them. If these supreme bug races of the primordial era devoured each other, in the end, there might be a peerless bug emperor. The god-fiend ant, god-devourer bug, 10 transformations celestial silkworm, archaic emperor butterfly, crack demonic butterfly, and skydream butterfly were all primordial mutants and qualified to participate in this battle. Of course, this was only a legend and had not been proven. Now, seeing this god-fiend ant, the god-devourer prince's eyes glowed coldly. Although he coveted the chaos body, he knew that it couldn't devour him. However, if he could devour the god-fiend ant, it would be greatly beneficial to the god-devourer prince. The little god-fiend ant was also filled with battle intent. Opposite him was the god-devourer bug of the primordial bug race. If he could defeat him and refine his power, it would be greatly beneficial to the little god-fiend ant. The god-fiend ant is a creature of the immortal region. You. The god-devourer prince looked at Zhang Xiaoyao. He's a battle servant that I subdued in the wilderness. Is there a problem? Zhang Xiaoyao smiled. Cut the crap. God Devourer Bug, I'm going to suppress you. The little god fiend ant shouted and attacked. Its small fist seemed to have the terrifying power to destroy the Nine Heavens Imperial Court. The god fiend strength superpower was unleashed. How dare you? The god devourer prince's face darkened. Jun Xiaoyaro said that the god fiend ant was his battle servant. Now, the battle servant was attacking him. Didn't that mean that he, the god devourer prince, was only qualified to fight with Jun Xiaoyao's battle servant? The god devourer prince's eyes were cold as he raised his hand and attacked. A dark beam of light shot out, annihilating everything around it. This was the god devourer bug's special devouring ability. The two primordial divine bugs collided, creating a shockwave. Although the little godfiend ant's body was small, it was full of vitality and directly formed the godfiend ant Dharma form. A huge blood red ant appeared in the void with enough power to destroy the sky. The god devourer prince also used his most powerful moves. Behind him, the supreme law formed a black hole that seemed to be able to devour everything. The battle between the two divine bugs was extremely intense. What made the god devourer prince's expression turn ugly was, he couldn't suppress the little godfiend ant. Of course, the little godfiend ant couldn't suppress him either. This was a humiliation to the god devourer prince. After all, the little godfiend ant was only Jun Xiaoyao's battle servant. And he was one of the 7 lesser emperors. Watching this battle, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. He suddenly had an idea. Could the little godfiend ant devour other primordial bugs in the future and transform into the eternal bug empress? It wasn't impossible. But now, let's end all of this, Jun Xiaoyao muttered to himself. He directly struck out with his hand. The chaotic giant palm formed, and with the godfiend strength superpower, it smashed toward the god devourer prince. Chapter 1022. Yu Xiaoyao, you. The god devourer crown prince roared when he saw Jun Xiaoyao's chaos palm coming at him. To his surprise, he realized something. Jun Xiaoyao was also using the divine demonic ant's great strength art. And it was even more terrifying than the divine demonic ant. Rumble. His 5 fingers were like pillars that supported the heavens. Chaotic mist lingered around them, and even the lines on his palm could be seen clearly. They were like the patterns of the stars. The god devourer crown prince summoned his natal divine weapon, the god devourer ring. The pitch-black ring was as eerie as a black hole, releasing a terrifying devouring power. Then, there was a loud bang. The void collapsed. The god devourer ring was sent flying by Jun Xiaoyao's palm. His chaos palm didn't slow down and wrapped around the god devourer crown prince. Refine. Jun Xiaoyao secretly activated the god devourer demonic art, and a terrifying devouring power erupted. He wanted to strip the law of devourer from the god devourer crown prince's body. How can this be? This devouring power, the god devourer crown prince couldn't believe it. This devouring power wasn't any weaker than his own devourer grand art. He couldn't understand how Jun Xiaoyao could control this kind of devouring power. No, he's not just trying to suppress me. He's trying to strip the law of devourer from me. The god devourer crown prince wasn't stupid. He immediately figured it out. As a god devourer insect, he naturally formed the law of devourer to become a supreme. What Jun Xiaoyao was doing right now was undoubtedly an attempt to take advantage of him. Yu Xiaoyao, do you really dare to kill me? The god devourer crown prince shouted. He didn't bring a guardian with him because he was going to the matchmaking convention. Plus, with his identity, no one in the foreign realm dared to provoke him. But now, the god devourer crown prince didn't expect Jun Xiaoyao to be so audacious as to kill him. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent, but his eyes revealed a hint of mockery. Isn't it too late to realize this now? Jun Xiaoyao didn't hold back in the slightest. These 7 minor emperors would be a threat to the immortal realm after they grew up. If he could get rid of one, he would kill one. Not to mention the fact that he still needed the law of devouring from the god devourer prince's body. There was no way he would let him go. Ah! The god devourer crown prince roared angrily and revealed. A terrifying black demonic insect with a mouth like a black hole appeared. Devourer insect's true form. Jun Xiaoyao activated his devouring power and chaotic power, enveloping the prince of the god Devourer and refining him in a frenzy. The god Devourer crown prince screamed. He originally, Devourer crown princes. Devourer s Devourer. Devourer 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 crown Devourer. He couldn't Devourers Devourer Devourer Devourer. Soon, the devouring law within the prince of god Devourer's body was stripped away and absorbed by Jun Xiaoyao. The Devourer origins. Jun Xiaoyao had killed one of the 7 minor emperors, Crown Prince Mo Jie, when he was at the quasi-supreme stage. Now that Jun Xiaoyao had broken through to the supremacy stage, he naturally didn't need to spend too much effort to kill the god Devourer Crown Prince. Jun Xiaoyao took out the Deluo sword embryo and slashed at the god Devourer ring. The god Devourer ring, which had consumed a lot of energy, was directly sucked dry by the Deluo sword embryo. The world fell silent. Tuoba Yu and the others were even more shocked to the extreme. In their eyes, the immortal Emperor Crown Prince was high and mighty like a god. He was easily killed by Jun Xiaoyao. This kind of impact deeply shocked their souls. Jun Xiaoyao looked indifferent in the face of countless fanatical and admiring gazes. Killing the Crown Prince was a small matter to him. Little Divine Demon Ant said, the god Devourer insect's corpse. Although Jun Xiaoyao had absorbed the law of Devourer in the god Devourer Crown Prince's body. But the corpse itself was still very attractive to Little Divine Demon Ant. These primordial godworms had a bloodline innate instinct to devour each other. Just like raising venomous insects, the one that survived after devouring would become the queen bug. Here. Jun Xiaoyao threw the god Devourer insect's body to Little Divine Demon Ant. The Little Divine Demon Ant happily accepted it. Refining the corpses of various primordial godworms was very beneficial to it. On the other side, the beings of the 5 royal families were all stunned. The god Devourer Crown Prince was gone just like that. Just thinking about it made their hearts turn cold. Jun Xiaoyao looked at the 5 royal families. We were all ordered by the god Devourer Crown Prince. Please forgive us, Lord War God. A blood spirit royal heavenly venerate stepped forward and cupped his hands. He was clearly a great heavenly venerate, but he bowed to Jun Xiaoyao. Of course, Luo Xiangling was also part of the reason. Jun Xiaoyao sized up the 5 royal families. He didn't intend to kill them all. It wasn't because he was merciful. Instead, it was because the 5 royal bloodlines were all like green leeks. They were the best followers. Jun Xiaoyao's current Church of Destiny had only infiltrated the Ice Spirit royal family. The power of faith provided by the royal family was much more than that of the slave race. It's not impossible to spare your lives, but I want your loyalty and submission, Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. This is the fortune of our clan. The powerhouses of the 5 royal families all nodded without hesitation. Their 5 royal bloodlines were considered to be at the bottom of the 100 great royal bloodlines. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become the god Devourer Crown Prince's lackeys. Moreover, Luo Xiangling had already killed all the top powerhouses of the 5 royal families. Now, the strength of the 5 royal families was even weaker. Even if they didn't follow Jun Xiaoyao, they were very likely to be eliminated or even fall from the ranks of the royal families. Jun Xiaoyao was now like the sun in the sky in the foreign realm. Behind him were the Shanao of Beach, the Luo King, the mysterious immortal, and other top powerhouses. Following him would be climbing up the social ladder. Jun Xiaoyao nodded secretly. The strong were respected in the foreign realm. As long as one was strong enough and had enough power, it was easy to make others submit. These people could be considered to have adapted to the situation. In the future, you will temporarily listen to the leader of the slave race, Tuoba Yu, and follow him to believe in the god of destiny and creation, Jun Xiaoyao said. This. Okay. The heavenly venerates of the royal families hesitated slightly, but they still agreed. Also, remember, I hate betrayal. The million traitors are an example. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was cold. The living beings of the 5 royal families all shivered inwardly. The scene of Jun Xiaoyao destroying millions of lives with a snap of his fingers was still deeply imprinted in their minds. Of course, you can also receive the blessing of the god of destiny and creation, and can cultivate the techniques he bestowed. Jun Xiaoyaro was still very good at playing the trick of giving a date with a stick. Sure enough, the beings of the 5 royal families all revealed looks of joy. Previously, they were also very curious as to why these slaves had become so strong. Now, it seemed that it was because they had received the God of Destiny and Creation's techniques. Lord Divine Envoy, Tuoba Yu and Tuoba Lan stepped forward. When they saw Jun Xiaoyaro, they couldn't hide their excitement, and their faces flushed red. Jun Xiaoyaro was already a legendary existence in their hearts. Develop well. If you encounter any obstacles, report my name. I believe that no one will be so tactless. As for the 5 royal families, I'll leave them to you to manage, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Yes, thank you for your appreciation, Lord Divine Envoy. The dignified holy hero of the Alliance of Destiny was now like a little fan who had received a gift from his idol. Tuoba Lan's beautiful eyes were also full of splendor. Lord Divine Envoy is not only a war god, but is also so good-looking. Tuoba Lan's eyes were a little blurred. She had the material to dream about at night. Chapter 1023. After the 5 royal bloodlines merge, I think the name can be changed. The Alliance of Fate is no longer suitable. Let's call it the Church of Fate. The God of Fate and Creation will bless all of you. He is watching over all of you. Jun Xiaoyaro was good at bluffing. The Church of Fate. Tuoba Yu muttered to himself, his eyes firm. We will definitely live up to Sir Oracle's expectations. Tuoba Yu and countless slaves responded in unison, their voices shaking the sky. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded with satisfaction. After the monarch emperor's court, Jun Xiaoyaro established a second force of his own. The Church of Fate. Jun Xiaoyaro happened to be a fateless one. It was a good match for the Church of Fate. Although the Church of Fate was pitifully weak right now, without a single top expert. Unlike the monarch emperor's court, which had mystique venerables and divine venerables at the beginning of its establishment. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was confident that the Church of Fate would definitely expand into a giant force in the future. This was because religions were often more attractive than ordinary forces. Perhaps even Jun Xiaoyaro himself would not have thought of it. The Church of Fate was established to make it easier to harvest faith. In the future, it would become a super sect that would sweep across the heavens and make billions of creatures worship. Of course, that was a story for another day. After the matter was over, Jun Xiaoyaro made some arrangements and left directly. Next, he would let Tuoba Yu and the others confidently develop believers. They could also start preaching in some royal bloodlines. Jun Xiaoyaro was already able to sense that the power of faith in the Innerverse was increasing at every moment. It was hard to imagine what kind of existence the seed of faith would give birth to. In short, Jun Xiaoyaro felt that it should not disappoint him. I hope the Church of Fate will bring me more surprises in the future, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. Afterward, Jun Xiaoyaro did not rush. Instead, he strolled on the foreign land with Luo Xiangling. This time, Luo Xiangling had been used as a tool. Naturally, he had to compensate her. Jun Xiaoyaro was also comprehending the law of devouring that he had extracted from the God Devourer Prince's body. He did not intend to turn the God Devourer Prince's laws into his own. Instead, he had to disassemble, analyze, comprehend, and then condense his own laws. As for the little divine demon ant, it returned to Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe after refining the spirit-eating bug's body and began its transformation. In just 1 month, Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling traveled through the mountains and rivers. During this time, the power of law once again filled Jun Xiaoyao's body. In his body, the power of law and the devouring immortal qi fused together. A brand new and complete set of laws appeared. It was pitch black and seemed to represent a supreme devouring profundity. The law of devour was formed. This was the second law that Jun Xiaoyaro had condensed after the physical body law. Jun Xiaoyao's body shook slightly as he felt his strength rise again. Although he did not break through to the next realm, he was much more powerful than before. Not only that, the law of devour made Jun Xiaoyao's god-devouring demonic technique even stronger, and it also integrated the spirit-eating bug's devouring great divine power. All in all, Jun Xiaoyaro had picked up a big bargain on this trip. Hey, Xiaoyao, you. Luo Xiangling noticed the subtle change in Zhun Xiaoyao's aura. Just a little. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Luo Xiangling took a deep look at Zhun Xiaoyao. It seems that you still have a lot of secrets. Who doesn't? Xiangling, if you want to know, I can tell you. Zhun Xiaoyao looked at Luo Xiangling. If he let her know his true identity, how would she react? However, Luo Xiangling shook her head willfully like a young girl. No, I hope that when the time comes, you will tell me sincerely, instead of me forcing you to tell me. Zhun Xiaoyao did not force her to explore her past, so how could she force Zhun Xiaoyao to tell her? Xiangling, you are really considerate. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled. This beautiful auntie was quite likable at times. No, no way. Luo Xiangling turned her face away. Her cheeks were slightly hot. She was no longer a little girl. But she always blushed and her heart beat faster. More than a month later, Zhun Xiaoyao and Luo Xiangling slowly returned to the Styx River Prefecture. On the way, Zhun Xiaoyao also heard that the matchmaking convention in the barbarian and demonic tribes was about to begin. It was time for Zhun Xiaoyao to go to Tushan to sign in. Xiangling, aren't you going? Zhun Xiaoyao asked. I'm not going. What can a woman like me do at the matchmaking convention? Luo Xiangling shook her head. She would only be jealous if she went. Out of sight, out of mind. Moreover, she and Zhun Xiaoyao had been together for a long time and knew Zhun Xiaoyao's character. Beauty was not attractive to him. That's good. Zhun Xiaoyao nodded slightly, exchanged a few pleasantries, and left. He really wanted to know what good things he could sign in at the matchmaking convention. Looking at Zhun Xiaoyao's departing figure, Luo Xiangling was slightly stunned for a moment. Then she bit her cherry lips with her jade-like teeth. Idiot, I don't want you to go. Luo Xiangling could not say such words no matter what. It was even more impossible for her to say it in front of Zhun Xiaoyao. Hence, she returned to the Ars Academy with a little bit of resentment. The barbarian and demonic tribes, one of the top 10 tribes of the foreign lands. It was the paradise of the demon race, the paradise of the ferocious beasts. Among the 10 great provinces, it was considered a relatively desolate place. But recently, it had become the focus of the foreign world. The famous Tushan 5 beauties were about to hold a matchmaking convention. It attracted countless prodigies and all kinds of outstanding talents. This was the matchmaking convention of the immortal emperor race. If one could marry one of the Tushan 5 beauties, they would have the backing of an emperor race. It was equivalent to marrying into a wealthy family. Even if it was a quasi-emperor race with similar status, the emperor race. It was equivalent to obtaining an emperor race ally. Therefore, the matchmaking convention was extremely attractive to all male prodigies. In the great barbarian continent, there was a region called Tushan. This was the residence of the immortal emperor race of the foreign world, the Tushan lineage. At this moment, the Tushan area was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and the atmosphere was jubilant. The prodigies of various races gathered in Tushan, looking forward to it. Even if there was no chance of being chosen. Just seeing the grace of the Tushan 5 beauties was enough to make this trip worthwhile. In the void, light suddenly surged. A white jade-like lion was pulling a gorgeous carriage. That's the night jade lion. A foreign creature couldn't help but exclaim when he saw it. This was a mutant race. Its strength was extremely strong to begin with, comparable to the prodigies of the quasi-emperor races. But now, it was pulling a carriage. It's the carriage of that emperor son of the Enlan emperor race. On the other side, the demonic cattail seed fluttered in the void like snowflakes. A woman in a long green dress appeared. It was goddess Pu Kue. Another one of the 7 young emperors has appeared. The appearance of some great figures among the foreign prodigies attracted waves of commotion. These were all people that were rarely seen. Suddenly, a whistling sound that seemed to pierce through metal and rocks sounded. It was 9 golden-crowned eagles pulling a carriage over. A handsome man dressed in reddish-gold battle armor with red wings on his back was inside. His expression was indifferent, as if victory was within his grasp. It's Kai Hong Yu. He really came. Many gazes gathered. Previously, The news of Kai Hongyu being defeated in Tushan could be said to be spread like wildfire. Now, the Kai Xiao clan had ascended, and Kai Hongyu had become the Kai Xiao king's disciple. Could Kai Hongyu, who had a different status, turn the tables and win the beauty? Many people were curious. Chapter 1024. Countless pairs of eyes fell upon Kai Hongyu. As a popular figure in the barbarian and demon continent, Kai Hongyu's every move was very eye-catching. Not to mention that he had a dark history in Tushan. This was a memory that Kai Hongyu himself did not want to recall. But now, Kai Hongyu's expression was calm and composed. Things were different now. This time, Kai Hongyu came with the goal of marrying a beautiful wife and concubine. In fact, there might even be more than one. Tushan was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and fireworks filled the sky. It was extraordinarily lively. Tens of thousands of banquets were spread out. Many beautiful Tushan Fox clan girls with foxtails on their backs carried jade plates and delicacies to the table. Many male prodigies who came were dazzled. The Tushan Fox clan girls were famous for their beauty. Just these girls alone were so charming. It was hard to imagine how charming the Tushan Five Beauties were. I heard that the Tushan Five Beauties have different personalities and beauty. Some are charming, some are cute, and some are elegant. Sigh, your thinking is a little complicated. Men don't care so much. They can just differentiate by size. Then, the bigger the better. No, moderation is beauty. It's just nice to hold. You guys are so vulgar. If you ask me, beauty depends on your thighs. The group of men began to discuss gentlemanly topics, causing some of the Tushan Fox clan girls to blush and grumble coquettishly. Of course, those noble quasi-emperor clans and prodigies were naturally in the VIP seats. Prince Lan suddenly walked to Goddess Pu Kuei's side. His hair shone brightly, and his face was handsome. He looked very otherworldly. The Lan Emperor clan was a well-known immortal emperor clan in the foreign domain. Their ancient ancestor, Lan, used the Lan spear to intimidate the heavens. As the prince of the Lan Emperor clan, he was also extraordinary and was one of the 7 minor emperors. Goddess Pu Kuei, have you heard of a piece of news recently? Prince Lan asked meaningfully. Goddess Pu Kuei was dressed in a green dress, and her true form was the demonic Typha tree. She naturally did not come here to find a groom, but to see if she could meet someone. You mean the god devourer emperor's son? Goddess Pu Kuei had obviously heard of it. The intelligence networks behind these top figures were not weak. The god devourer prince was killed by the primal chaos body in the heavenly tomb continent. A major character of the God Eater clan was enraged and wanted to attack the primal chaos body, but was stopped in the end, said Prince Lan. Could it be the Shanao of Beach from the Ars Academy again? Goddess Pu Kuei was curious. Everyone knew that the Shanao of Beach of the Ars Academy cared a lot about the Chaos Constitution. No, it's the Izya clan, said Prince Lan. The Izya clan, the clan that has some connections with the Avacania realm. Goddess Pu Kuei was surprised. The Izya clan was also an immortal emperor clan. However, what was special about them was that they had some connections with the Avacania lands. They were also a very mysterious race. But the Izya clan doesn't seem to have anything to do with the Chaos Body. Why would they stop the God Eater clan for him? Goddess Pu Kuei found it strange. It should be related to the Chaos Constitution's identity as one of the 6 apocalyptic kings. I heard that there seems to be an awakened king in the Izya clan, said Prince Lan. I see. It seems that no one in our world dares to provoke the Chaos Constitution. Goddess Pu Kuei sighed. The Ars Academy, the Izya clan, and the mysterious immortal behind the Chaos Constitution. In the foreign realm, other than the Ultimate Emperor clan, who would dare to kill the Chaos Constitution? Isn't your purpose of coming here this time for the Chaos Constitution? Prince Lan's eyes were deep. Indeed. Pu Yarrow, the prodigy of my clan, provoked the Chaos Constitution before. Now, I want to see if I can ease the relationship with him. After all, he has already killed 2 of the 7 minor emperors. I'm afraid that I will suddenly disappear, Goddess Pu Kuei said honestly. She was really a little scared. The 7 minor emperors whose names shook the foreign realm. They were killed one by Jun Xiaoyao like chickens. Goddess Pu Kuei was afraid that it would be her turn soon. But he hasn't come yet. I don't know if I can see the chaos constitution this time. Prince Lan shook his head. Then, a Tushan elder appeared. Welcome to Tushan, everyone. The purpose of this matchmaking convention is to find a good husband for the 5 princesses of Tushan. Of course, the man who can become my son-in-law must be 1 in 10,000 and surpass his peers. Next, I will set up 3 stages. Anyone can participate. As long as you can pass, you will be qualified to be chosen by the princesses. After the Tushan elder finished speaking, formation patterns surged in the entire Tushan. As the light flickered, 3 areas appeared. These 3 stages are the Illusion Realm, the 10,000 Beast Formation, and the Embroidered Ball Battle. If you want to become my son-in-law and are willing to participate, you can enter the formation. As soon as the Tushan elder finished speaking, countless wind-breaking sounds immediately sounded in the world. The prodigies of the various clans swarmed into the formation like carps crossing the river. I'll go join in the fun and see if I can find a good match. Prince Lan smiled and stepped into the void. It was impossible for Goddess Pu Kuei to participate. She sighed softly and looked towards the horizon. Is he not coming? On the other side, Kai Hongyu smiled faintly. He had been trained by King Kai Xiao. In terms of strength, he was not inferior to the 7 minor emperors. So today, he could get one of the 5 beauties. If he was lucky, it was not impossible to get the favor of 2 beauties. After all, there was a world of difference between him now and before. There should be no women who would not be surprised and admire him. Soon, the challenge began. The first stage, the Illusion Realm, tested one's temperament, willpower, spirit, soul, and so on. To a certain extent, it was similar to the 100 reincarnations that Jun Xiaoyao had experienced in the Reincarnation Sea. Of course, compared to the strength of the 100 reincarnation cycle, the difference was huge. However, there were still a large number of prodigies who were immersed in it and couldn't extricate themselves. If you don't even have the most basic temperament, what right do you have to be my son-in-law? Seeing this scene, the Tushan elder sneered in his heart. How could the immortal emperor race be so easy to climb? Not all losers could turn the tables. Of course, there were also those who performed well. For example, Prince Lan had directly walked through the illusory realm, and it was as if he'd entered a deserted place. He didn't even stop. Kai Hongyu was the same. There were also some prodigies from other emperor races and quasi-emperor races who performed well. The second stage was called the 10,000 Beasts Formation. There were many ferocious beasts formed by formation runes. Most of them had the strength of a quasi-emperor or a supremacy. There were even those who had perfected supremacy. Obviously, this was a test of one's true foundation and strength. In this round, a large number of sky prides who were not strong enough were eliminated. While these prodigies were challenging the stage. At the highest peak in the depths of Tushan, in a luxurious palace on the clouds, 5 women with different graces were in the middle. A light screen appeared in front of them, reflecting the images of the prodigies who were challenging the stage. A lazy voice came from behind them. My daughters, who do you like? Chapter 1025. Without a doubt, these 5 beautiful women were the 5 princesses of the Tushan emperor family. The first princess, Tushan Yeye, was in a red dress. She had a domineering figure and was a seductive beauty. The second princess, Tushan Daodao, was in an apricot yellow dress. She looked weak and delicate, but she was also quite beautiful. The third princess, Tushan Xiaoxiao, was in a long dress. She was slender and flawless. She was also good at playing the guzheng. She was elegant and charming. She was in love with Linglong. The fourth princess, Tushan Wanwan, was in a green armor. She was valiant and had a straightforward personality. Although she was called a tomboy by her sisters, she was both valiant and seductive. The fifth princess, Tushan Chun Chun, was in a pink dress. Her white hair was soft. She was mischievous and charming. She was like a crystal porcelain doll. It could be said that if these 5 beauties with different styles walked out at the same time, They would definitely blind the eyes of all men. She had all the types of women that she should have. Behind the 5 of them stood a tall and beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure. She had a mature charm in her seductive appearance. This was something that not even the first princess, Tushan Yeye, had. Tushan Yeye was indeed seductive, but she lacked the charm that came with age. She was the mother of the 5 princesses. Her name was Tushan Mingfei. She was a divine creation expert and one of the leaders of Tushan. Tushan Mingfei was worried sick about the marriage of her 5 daughters. If they couldn't find a partner, it would be difficult for their love dream Immortal Sutra to evolve. It would be even more impossible for them to break through to a higher level and reach new heights. Daughters, is there anyone you like? Your marriage can't be delayed any longer, Tushan Mingfei urged. Tushan Mingfei wouldn't be in such a hurry if her 5 daughters hadn't found a good husband. However, the first princess, Tushan Yeye, was looking at the prodigies on the light screen. She was just picking her fingernails out of boredom. The second princess, Tushan Daodao, was also looking away. The third princess, Tushan Xiaoxiao, was thinking about something. The fourth princess, Tushan Wanwan, and the fifth princess, Tushan Chun Chun, were both absent-minded. He wasn't looking at the light screen at all. It was as if he was daydreaming, thinking about something. His face was dispirited. Looking at her 5 disinterested daughters, Tushan Mingfei put her hand to her forehead and felt helpless. Why didn't you come? Tushan Chun Chun was upset. Jun Xiaoyaro had promised her that he would attend the matchmaking event. Even if she didn't come here to participate in the betrothal contest, Tushan Chun Chun would be satisfied as long as she could attend it. Tushan Xiaoxiao had the same thought. I'm afraid those 2 girls are no longer interested in the matchmaking ceremony. Tushan Yeye cast a sidelong glance at Tushan Chun Chun. Looking at her 5 daughters, Tushan Mingfei put her hands on her hips, raised her plump chest and said, I don't care. Today, all 5 of you must find a partner. If you don't have a partner, you won't be able to improve. In the future, Tushan will depend on you. Mother, we need to see if there's anything we like, said Tushan Xiaoxiao. I feel that the imperial prince of the Anlan imperial clan is pretty good. There's also Kai Hongyu from the Kai Xiao clan. The current hymn is quite suitable for you. Tushan Mingfei glanced at the light screen. Crown Prince Anlan, Kai Hongyu, and the others were indeed the most outstanding. If it was in the past, Tushan Mingfei would definitely look down on Kai Hongyu. But now, she could accept him. The 5 beauties didn't think so. Kai Hongyu could be considered a counterattack. But in their eyes, it was just SOSO. On the other hand, Kai Hongyu and the others had easily broken through the second stage of the 1,000 Beasts formation. Next was the third stage, the embroidered ball battle. This was the last stage. The rules were simple. A huge arena floated in the void. There were 20 embroidered balls on it. The prodigies who could snatch the embroidered balls were qualified to be chosen by the 5 beauties to become their husbands. There weren't many prodigies who could make it to the third stage. But there were a few hundred of them. Among these prodigies, the lowest status was from the top royal families. The competition was fierce. Ch, who dares to compete with me? Kai Hongyu's expression was cold, and his eyes were like lightning. The surrounding prodigies all stayed far away. He successfully obtained the embroidered ball. Crown Prince Anlan and the others also obtained it. Outside, countless spectators were watching the ceremony. They weren't surprised by the selected candidates. Looks like Crown Prince Anlan will be able to get the beauty as he wishes today, Goddess Pu Kue muttered to herself. Soon, the 20 candidates who obtained the embroidered balls appeared. Congratulations, everyone, you are qualified to become the son-in-law of the Tushan clan, the elder of the Tushan clan said with a smile. These 20 people arrived at the palace above the clouds. Below, hundreds of thousands of living beings of various races were watching with envious gazes. I wonder who will get the beauty today. Many people were curious. In the void, a rain of flowers fell. The appearance of the 5 peerless beauties made heaven and earth pale in comparison. Seeing this, Kai Hongyu clenched his fists. It was time to wash away the humiliation. He was very confident that he would be chosen. Because the 5 beauties of Tushan had no choice. The only outstanding people were him, Crown Prince and Lan, and a few others. Crown Prince and Lan's expression was indifferent. It was purely for entertainment, and it was naturally best if he could get the beauty. Everyone, you are all one in a million peerless figures. I hope you treat my daughter with sincerity. Tushan Mingfei also appeared. She was charming, beautiful, and curvy. Her curves were not inferior to Tushan Ye's. They were so ripe and plump that juice could drip out. Amazing. A prodigy with the surname Cao looked at Tushan Mingfei and swallowed his saliva. On the other side, Kai Hongyu smiled and said, "You're being too polite, Your Holiness Mingfei. We came to participate in the matchmaking convention because we admire the 5 beauties very much." That's good. Tushan Mingfei nodded slightly. Kai Hongyu understood what she meant. What else could they compete in next? Betrothal gifts. Kai Hongyu waved his sleeve, and all kinds of rare treasures appeared. Many of them were accumulated for a long time or obtained through fortuitous encounters. Even the supreme treasure that the Scarlet Owl King had bestowed upon him was offered up by him. When Prince Lan saw this, he took out his betrothal gift as well. This was also a part of the competition. Even among the boundary Emperor clans and Emperor clans, prodigies were divided into different levels. Only the most favored prodigies would have more capital. Looking at the dazzling betrothal gifts, the prodigies below were amazed. This was the work of the boundary Emperor clans and Emperor clans. Tushan Mingfei nodded slightly. These betrothal gifts were reasonable. However, the 5 princesses' expressions were very calm. Daughters, start activating the immortal sutra of passion and see if the red string of marriage can be tied to the fated person, Tushan Mingfei said. Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chunchun sighed in their hearts. Especially Tushan Wanwan. She knew that the red string of marriage that belonged to her had already been connected to someone else. Just as everyone was waiting for the 5 princesses of Tushan to find a good husband, a voice suddenly rang out. A faint voice suddenly came from the distant sky. Am I late to this matchmaking convention? Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chuanchuan's beautiful eyes lit up when they heard this voice. Sir. The 2 girls couldn't help but cry out in joy. Chapter 10:26. In the distance, a handsome figure in a white robe appeared. It was Jun Xiaoyao. He was not in a hurry. He did not come to the matchmaking event for the matchmaking event. Everyone went silent for a moment when they saw Jun Xiaoyao show up. It's the chaotic body. The god of war is here. I was right. The god of war will come. Jun Xiaoyao's arrival attracted everyone's attention. As one of the top celebrities in the foreign lands, Jun Xiaoyao would attract attention wherever he went. The god of war is like the rumors. He's an immortal. He's like a god in the mortal world. Some of the female creatures were mesmerized. In the foreign lands, one would only be treated as a plaything if they were good-looking. One would be the center of attention if they were both good-looking and powerful. As soon as Jun Xiaoyao appeared, all the male prodigies were overshadowed by his otherworldly aura. Even Kai Hongyu, Prince Lan, and the others, who were the center of attention. Jun Xiaoyao had taken all the limelight away from him, making him look rather lackluster. Sir. Tushan Chunchun and Tushan Wanwan flew to Jun Xiaoyao's side without caring about their image. Jun Xiaoyao was sandwiched in the middle, one on the left and one on the right. Sir, Chunchun thought you wouldn't come. That's right. If Sir doesn't come, what's the point of this matchmaking event? Seeing Jun Xiaoyao being sandwiched by the 2 beauties, all the creatures in the foreign lands were speechless. They were the brides who were going to be married today. However, they were so enthusiastic about Jun Xiaoyao. It was like they were 2 different people compared to when they were talking to those suitors. Sorry. I ran into some trouble on the way and wasted some time. Jun Xiaoyao smiled. Goddess Pu Kuei suddenly stepped forward and said with a smile, Sir, the trouble you're talking about is killing the god-devouring prince, right? A single sentence caused the heavens and earth to fall into a deathly silence. What? Lord War God killed the god-devourer prince, one of the 7 minor emperors? Many people's minds went blank, and their scalps went numb. The news of the god-devourer prince's death had yet to spread. Oh! Jun Xiaoyao looked at Pu Kuei. These emperor clans were quite well informed. I'm Pu Kuei from the Pu devil race. Previously, Pu Yarrow from my race had a conflict with you. I hope you don't mind. Goddess Pu Kuei lowered her stance. She was just short of telling Jun Xiaoyao, I hope you don't mess with me and cause trouble for me. I don't care who it is. Jun Xiaoyao waved his hand. Tushan Yeye, Tushan Daodao, and Tushan Xiaoxiao all looked at Jun Xiaoyao. Their eyes lit up. Jun Xiaoyao's temperament was indeed very special. On the other hand, Tushan Xiaoxiao's eyes flashed with suspicion. This temperament seemed familiar. However, after thinking about it for a while, she shook her head. There shouldn't be such a thing. He has the chaotic body. Tushan Xiaoxiao cut off that ridiculous thought in her mind. Tushan Mingfei also looked at Jun Xiaoyao, feeling a little stunned. It was her first time seeing a junior with such a unique temperament. The war god, I've heard a lot about you. I'm Prince Enlan. Prince Enlan cupped his hands slightly at Jun Xiaoyao, his attitude amiable. The Enlan clan, Jun Xiaoyao murmured in his heart. This clan was very famous. Jun Xiaoyao also nodded. Then, he looked at Kai Hongyu. Kai Hongyu's expression was cold. Especially when he saw Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chuanchuan's attitude towards Jun Xiaoyao. He felt even more uncomfortable. Previously, when he proposed, he was mercilessly rejected. He didn't even get to see the 5 princesses. However, they were so enthusiastic towards Jun Xiaoyao. They were simply throwing themselves at him. How could there be such a huge gap between two people? War god Jade Xiaoyao, you're not here to participate in the matchmaking convention, right? Kai Hongyu said calmly. I'm just here to join in the fun, Jun Xiaoyao said. He could vaguely sense a special wave from Kai Hongyu. Only the heavenly bookmaster could sense it. Kai Hongyu is indeed the heavenly bookmaster. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed. He could vaguely sense Kai Hongyu's wave. However, Kai Hongyu couldn't sense his wave. With the help of the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique, Jun Xiaoyao could completely conceal his aura and wave. After that, although Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chunchun were helpless, they still activated the immortal sutra of passion with the other 3 sisters. Marriage red strings spread out from their bodies. All eyes were on them. Everyone wanted to know who would benefit from these 5 beauties in the end. It's me, it must be me, Kai Hongyu murmured in his heart. Not only did he want to marry the princess of the Tushan Fox clan, but he also wanted to wash away the humiliation of being rejected. The 5 marriage red strings landed on the 20 suitors who had obtained the embroidered balls. However, they skipped over them one by one. A few of the red strings came to Kai Hongyu. Kai Hongyu held his breath for a moment. He watched as the marriage red strings approached. Then, he missed them. How can this be? Kai Hongyu's mind buzzed. Swoosh. The 5 marriage red strings seemed to have sensed something and suddenly flew into the distance. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, they were tied to Jun Xiaoyao's hand. 5 marriage red strings were tied to his 5 fingers. Not to mention the tens of thousands of prodigies present, they were extremely shocked. Even Jun Xiaoyao himself was stunned by what he saw. He was just a bystander, an onlooker. He had never thought of getting involved. How? How can this be? How can 5 marriage red strings be tied to one person? Even the god of war can't do this, right? Could there be something wrong with this cultivation method of the Tushan Fox clan? Astonishment was written all over everyone's faces. They were all stupefied. It was already a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to marry a princess of Tushan. However, all 5 marriage red strings were tied to Jun Xiaoyao's hand. That was ridiculous. What's going on? Could there be something wrong? Tushan Mingfei, the mother of the 5 princesses, was also very surprised. How outstanding was the man who could match up to her 5 daughters at the same time? She wanted to check if there was something wrong with the immortal scripture of love and dream. Tushan Mingfei's beautiful eyes flashed slightly, and she also slightly activated the immortal scripture of love and dream. A red line of marriage appeared. Although Tushan Mingfei was already a mother, she was still practicing this cultivation method. Then, the red string of marriage seemed to have been attracted to Jun Xiaoyaro again, and it was tied to his wrist. Tushan Mingfei was stunned. The 5 princesses were also stunned. Jun Xiaoyaro was also stunned. Everyone was stunned. What the hell was going on? How could Tushan Mingfei's marriage red string be tied to Jun Xiaoyao's hand? Some creatures were stunned and couldn't help but say, "Oh my god, oh my god." Even the mother-in-law, what's going to happen next? Is it going to be rejuvenated? Chapter 10:27. This scene came as a surprise to everyone. They didn't expect such a ridiculous scene to appear. It was already a blessing to have one of the 5 beauties of Tushan. And now, all 5 of the red strings of marriage were tied to Jun Xiaoyaro. What was even more ridiculous was that even their mother, Tushan Mingfei's red string of marriage, was tied to Jun Xiaoyaro. This could be said to have made the eyeballs of all living beings almost fall out. Even Jun Xiaoyaro himself, who was the person involved in the incident. His brain was slightly short-circuited. There was something special about this Tushan cultivation method. Although Jun Xiaoyaro knew that he was very outstanding, it could be said that it was unprecedented in the past and would never be replicated in the future. Since ancient times, it was unparalleled in the world. No man could be more good-looking than him. No man could surpass him in talent. If there were really immortals in the world, they might not be able to compare to Jun Xiaoyaro when they were the same age as him. Jun Xiaoyaro knew that he was outstanding. But it was a little ridiculous to all of them. "Mother, how can you do this? This is our matchmaking convention." Tushan Chun immediately became anxious and stomped her feet. The competition between the 5 sisters was already fierce enough. In the end, even her mother's red string of marriage was tied. This was definitely a big mistake. Tushan Mingfei couldn't help but blush. She was no longer a little girl, but at this moment, she was also a little embarrassed. She didn't expect this to happen. Originally, she just wanted to test if there was something wrong with the red string of marriage. Now it seemed that, indeed, Jun Xiaoyaro was too outstanding. He perfectly met the standards of the Tushan Fox clan. That was why these red strings were all tied to Jun Xiaoyaro. Even her red string, if Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't here, the red string of marriage might be interested in Prince and Lan, Kai Hongyu, and the others. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro was like the bright moon, and the other 20 outstanding suitors were just fireflies. What should we do? Lord War God doesn't seem to be here for the matchmaking convention. Yeah, he should be here to watch the ceremony. A mere spectator is actually more outstanding than all the participating heaven's favorites. How ironic. Many living beings clicked their tongues and sighed. He didn't expect to see such a wonderful scene. What would happen next? That's right. Mister, you are the one. Tushan Chun was thrilled. Previously, she was not willing to participate in the matchmaking convention. She had already made up her mind that she would not marry anyone other than Jun Xiaoyaro. Now, everything was perfect. Young master, me too. Tushan WN was a straightforward person, but now she was a little shy, which was rare. He's that war god. He looks gentle and refined. I wonder what his personality is like. Tushan Dao couldn't help but sneak a glance at Jun Xiaoyaro and whispered, "How come? Apart from Jun Xiaoyaro, there's someone else." Tushan Xiaoxiao was suspicious. Previously, her red string of marriage was connected to the son of God of the Jun family in the immortal region. After it was severed, she was sure that Jun Xiaoyaro had died. Looks like this chaotic body's talent is not inferior to the son of God of the Jun family in the immortal region, Tushan Xiaoxiao thought to herself. As for Tushan Yeye, her beautiful eyes locked onto Jun Xiaoyaro the moment he appeared. The primordial chaotic body is indeed the best candidate. It can also help me reach a higher level. More importantly, the chaotic body should last for a long time. Tushan Yeye licked her red lips. Although she looked seductive, she was actually very protective of her body. If she was certain, she would only be loyal to one person. Jun Xiaoyaro did indeed meet her criteria in many aspects. He was much more outstanding than Prince and Lan and Kai Hongyu. TSK, my good son-in-law, you're so late. Tushan Mingfei smiled seductively to ease the awkward atmosphere. The red string of marriage disappeared silently. She looked at Zhang Xiaoyao, and the more she looked, the more satisfied she was. You must be Senior Mingfei. I'm just here to watch the ceremony. I don't have any other intentions. Zhang Xiaoyao smiled politely. If it were anyone else, they would have already taken all 5 beauties in their arms if they were given such treatment. However, Zhang Xiaoyao had seen too many peerless beauties along the way. He already had a strong immunity. Although he wasn't Liu Xiaohui, he wasn't an animal who thought with his lower body. He couldn't stop other women from liking him. However, he wouldn't fall in love easily. Sir, you can't avoid it. Tushan Chun giggled. Sir, I hope you can guide me in my cultivation. Tushan Wanwan was also very straightforward. It seems that the Love Dream Immortal Sutra has already made a choice for me. Tushan Xiaoxiao didn't refuse. I want to try too. Tushan Daodao raised her hand weakly. Man, you've successfully attracted my attention. Tushan Yeye winked at Zhang Xiaoyao seductively. The 5 beauties of Tushan actually expressed their interest in Zhang Xiaoyao at the same time. As for the other 20 prodigies who made it out of the encirclement, they were left out in the cold. Snowflakes fluttered in the north wind. They felt a chill in their hearts. This doesn't conform to the rules. Kai Hongyu couldn't help but say. They had to go through 3 trials before they finally had the chance to propose marriage. However, Zhang Xiaoyao didn't do anything as soon as he arrived, and he won the favor of the 5 beauties and even his mother-in-law. Wasn't this a little too absurd? It caused Kai Hongyu's mentality to collapse. What happened to marrying a beauty? Didn't he say that he was going to wash away his shame? This didn't follow the plot at all. Rules. The red line of marriage is the best rule. Tushan Wanwan pursed her lips. She had already made up her mind when she was at the Ars Academy. Even if Zhang Xiaoyao didn't come today, she wouldn't marry someone like Kai Hongyu. Looking at Kai Hongyu's unwillingness to admit defeat, Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. Wasn't this the situation he wanted to see? Kai Hongyu, it seems like you really want to propose marriage? Zhang Xiaoyao asked. What do you mean? Kai Hongyu raised his eyebrows. Zhang Xiaoyao was like the sun in the sky in the foreign lands now. However, Kai Hongyu wasn't weak either. Hence, there was nothing to be afraid of. If you can give me something that I'm interested in, I might be willing to make a bet with you. If I lose, I won't interfere with the current situation. Zhang Xiaoyao revealed a faint smile. Oh, what's the bet? Kai Hongyu asked. It's too much to ask you to defeat me, Zhang Xiaoyao muttered. A sharp glint flashed across Kai Hongyu's eyes. However, he didn't say anything. Because that was the truth. How about this? If you can defeat me, even if it's just 1 step, I'll consider it your win. Even half a step is fine. I'll leave immediately without any hesitation. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can give me something that I'm interested in. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Zhang Xiaoyao had already set a trap. He was just short of letting Kai Hongyu walk into it. However, Zhang Xiaoyao was too good at reading people's minds. He had already seen through Kai Hongyu. He definitely wouldn't reject him. Chapter 1028. Zhang Xiaoyao's bet was definitely a temptation. It hit Kai Hongyu's weak spot. He did want to marry the beauties. Secondly, he wanted to wash away the shame in the past. Therefore, Zhang Xiaoyao's suggestion was very tempting to him. Sir, you. Tushan Chun wanted to say something but stopped. To put it bluntly, wasn't Zhang Xiaoyao using them as stakes in a bet? If Zhang Xiaoyao lost, wouldn't they have to marry someone else? Don't worry. Don't you trust me? Zhang Xiaoyao smiled faintly. He admitted that he might be a bit of a jerk. But he was definitely not a jerk. He wouldn't do something as stupid as pushing the women who liked him to others. He couldn't stop the 5 beauties from liking him. He might not really have a wonderful relationship with the 5 beauties. But he definitely wouldn't push the 5 beauties to other men. Giving them away was such a stupid thing to do. Probably only those who liked to be cuckolded would do that. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't think that he had such a special hobby. He also didn't have the habit of matchmaking. Jun Xiaoyaro dared to bet because he was 100% confident. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, Tushan Chun Chun was completely relieved. She had absolute confidence in Jun Xiaoyaro to begin with. Seeing this, Kai Hongyu's eyes darkened. He took out some treasures. For example, the elixir of immortality, divine gold, divine iron, and so on. But Jun Xiaoyaro didn't even bother to look at them. He didn't care at all. Come on, how can these things compare to a strand of our hair? Tushan Chun Chun snorted. She was helping Jun Xiaoyaro. Do you think you can't even make young master take a step back? If so, which one of us will be willing to marry you? Tushan Wanwan also started to help. Hearing these words, Kai Hongyu's face stiffened. He was here today to wash away the shame. In the end, he was humiliated again. The tens of thousands of onlookers had strange expressions on their faces as they watched the show. Could it be that Kai Hongyu is going to repeat his old story today? That's enough. If you want to bet, I'll keep you company. However, what I'm going to take out next, can you reject it? Kai Hongyu shouted. He was so angry that he got carried away. Besides, Kai Hongyu knew that he could not defeat Jun Xiaoyaro. He should be able to push her back a step, right? If he could not even do that, Kai Hongyu would look down on himself. He took out a dark golden scroll. It was like gold leaf, simple and low-key, but it gave off a feeling of the vicissitudes of life. Obviously, this was an item from the bygone era. Although Jun Xiaoyaro was well aware of the answer, he still had to ask. Have you heard of the 9 great heavenly books? Kai Hongyu sneered. As soon as these words were spoken, countless beings were shocked. It's the 9 great heavenly tomes. Wasn't it said to have been lost in history? I heard that the 9 great heavenly tomes are related to a shocking secret. If one can collect all 9 great heavenly tomes, they will be able to see a path that has never been seen before. When Kai Hongyu took out the heavenly tomes, all the beings were shocked. Compared to the heavenly tomes, the elixir of immortality, immortal metal, and boundary emperor weapons were nothing. It was not that they were worthless, but they could not be compared to the heavenly tomes at all. That was because the 9 great heavenly tomes were too rare. There were only 9 of them in the entire universe. It could be said that Kai Hongyu was going all out in order to avenge his humiliation. Not bad. You've indeed piqued my interest. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled slightly. Let me see what you're capable of. He did not waste any more words. Kai Hongyu attacked right away. He raised his hand and a raging inferno burned the sky. Even the void was burned down. Kai Xiao was an ominous bird that was born in the fire. It had mastered the ultimate law of fire. Jun Xiaoyao's body shook slightly in the face of Kai Hongyu's attack. A total of 20 dharmic power immunity divine rings enveloped his body. No flames could get close to his body. Prince Mo Jie's technique. Heavenly Lady Pu Kuei and Prince and Lan's eyes flashed. 3 realms 6 paths, Firehouse Buddha prison. Kai Hongyu did not hold back at all when he saw that. He immediately performed the ancestral technique of the Kai Xiao tribe. In an instant, heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a sea of fire. It was as if there were countless beings wailing in the flames. The entire 3 realms seemed to be a burning house. All the living beings were suffering in it. It was the ancestral technique of the Kai Xiao tribe. It was extremely powerful. It was like a prison of fire that imprisoned Jun Xiaoyaro in it. It was constantly burning and refining. Moreover, this technique was supported by the law of fire in Kai Hongyu's body, increasing its power by several times. What a powerful technique! Some of the prodigies looked extremely solemn when they saw that. After being trained by the immortal king, Kai Hongyu's strength had indeed undergone a qualitative transformation. As expected of the Kai Xiao king's disciple. His current strength is no weaker than the 7 minor emperors, Prince and Lan exclaimed. Facing Kai Hongyu's ultimate technique. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still calm. He activated the law of devour in his body. This was not the god-devouring emperor's technique. Instead, It was a technique that Jun Xiaoyaro had comprehended after disassembling and comprehending it. A huge black hole appeared. Countless pitch-black devour Dao laws spread and intertwined in the surroundings. The sea of flames that covered the sky and the earth, as well as the fire mansion's cage, were all devoured by it. That's the god-devouring emperor's technique. Prince Lan and Goddess Pu Kuei were shocked when they saw that. It was one thing for Jun Xiaoyaro to perform the god-devouring emperor's technique. But now, he had even performed the god-devouring emperor's technique. How is this possible? Kai Hongyu was a little confused. How could his ancestral technique be broken so easily? Whoosh! Jun Xiaoyaro stepped forward and pushed his hand. An ancient tablet appeared in the void and shattered the void. It was the battle tablet hand from the God of War catalogue. Bam! Kai Hongyu was sent flying. The blood in his chest was churning. Jun Xiaoyaro stomped his foot again. In the void, spatial ripples spread out, and traces of spatial cracks appeared. It was the void quake from the God of War catalogue as well. Splat! Kai Hongyu finally spat out a mouthful of blood. Jun Xiaoyaro instantly appeared above Kai Hongyu. He stomped on his chest and sent him crashing toward the mountain peak. Kai Hongyu spat out a mouthful of blood. "Give me the heavenly book," Jun Xiaoyaro said coldly as he stomped on Kai Hongyu. Kai Hongyu had no doubt that if he hesitated for a moment, Jun Xiaoyaro would crush his body. Here. Kai Hongyu was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. He had bitten his lips so hard that they were bleeding. He could only give the soul book to Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro took the soul book and released his foot. He said with a smile, "You're willing to admit defeat. That's admirable." Kai Hongyu was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. How could he not admit defeat? If he did not admit defeat, he would lose his life. He knew that Jun Xiaoyaro killed people without batting an eyelid. He did not even hesitate to kill Prince Mo Jie. Everyone present looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with a covetous look in their eyes. After all, the heavenly book was an absolute treasure. No one would not covet it, although it might cause some trouble if he obtained the soul book in public. However, Jun Xiaoyaro had the Ars Academy behind him. He had the protection of the Shanao of Beach and the Luo King. He also had a mysterious immortal in the eyes of others. Jun Xiaoyaro believed that no one would dare to do anything to him. It seems like there's no doubt about the outcome of today's matchmaking. 5 beauties marrying one husband. This is truly an unexpected situation. Didn't you forget someone? Many people were whispering to each other. They did not expect this outcome. At that moment, Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly felt a burning sensation on his wrist. It was the dark hexagram mark. It was burning. Jun Xiaoyaro looked into the distance and sensed a dark aura of the same origin. As expected, the show is not over yet. Chapter 1029. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro defeat Kai Hongyu in just a few moves. The other 19 heavenly legends who had broken through the encirclement and obtained the embroidered balls were extremely shocked. After all, Kai Hongyu's strength had already reached the level of the 7 emperors. In the end, he was still defeated by Jun Xiaoyaro in just a few moves. Apart from the 6 apocalyptic kings and those monsters of the ultimate monarch race, no one else in the younger generation is a match for the chaotic body, right? Many creatures present were whispering and trying to figure out Jun Xiaoyao's strength. Haha, seeing is believing. Brother Xiaoyao's strength is worthy of the title of God of War. Looks like you're in luck today. Prince Lan smiled and took the initiative to show his goodwill. He wasn't stupid. There was no need to become enemies with Jun Xiaoyaro because of a woman he didn't need. Seeing Prince Lan show weakness and withdraw, the other elites also withdrew one by one. They didn't have the guts and ability to fight with Jun Xiaoyaro for a woman. They watched as Jun Xiaoyaro single-handedly overpowered the entire place. Stars appeared in Tushan Wanwan's eyes. She had always admired the strong. Jun Xiaoyao's performance undoubtedly proved that he was the ruler among the younger generation of the foreign lands. Indeed. Even Tushan Yeye, who had high standards, couldn't find any fault with Jun Xiaoyaro, who was impeccable in terms of appearance, status, and strength. It could be said that facing such an outstanding man, Not only the Tushan five beauties. Even Tushan Mingfei's heart wavered slightly. She couldn't help but exclaim that such a peerless figure had appeared in this era. If I were tens of thousands of years younger. Tushan Mingfei didn't dare to think about it. But now, she definitely didn't have the mood to think about it. She wouldn't fight with her 5 daughters for a man. The 5 beauties surrounded Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao felt a headache coming on as he looked at the 5 beauties, who were all of different sizes. He did come here with a purpose. But he didn't come here for the 5 beauties. Sisters, what do you think? Tushan Yeye looked at her 4 sisters. I won't. Tushan Chun Chun was the first to voice her opinion. Neither will I. Tushan WN sounded certain. I'm interested. Tushan Xiao Xiao blinked. There can't be a better one, can there? Tushan Dao Dao said weakly. Seeing this, Tushan Yeye sighed helplessly. Since we sisters don't want to let go, there's only one way. Tushan Yeye's watery eyes suddenly turned to Jun Xiaoyao as she said with a sweet voice. Lord Battle God, can you handle 5? Jun Xiaoyao's expression didn't change when he heard this. He said indifferently, let's not talk about other things for now. Asking a man whether he can do it or not is a dangerous act in itself. Because, Jun Xiaoyao abruptly stepped up and pinched Tushan Yu's chin. It's very easy to be eaten clean. Tushan Yeye's face blushed silently. Tushan Xiaoxiao was a little surprised. They had always thought that their eldest sister was cold and domineering with a strong aura. But now, she was completely suppressed by Jun Xiaoyao. She was like a little girl. Lord Xiaoyao is really strong. Tushan Yeye shrank back. For the first time, she felt that her aura was completely suppressed. She could only say that this man in front of her was too deep for her to grasp. Haha, it seems that my 5 daughters are fine with it. In that case, then, Tushan Mingfei was about to make the decision. However, at this moment, she seemed to have sensed something and her eyes lit up. This feeling of the blood moving, Tushan Mingfei was a little surprised. Not only her, but all the Tushan foxes at the same time. They felt that their blood was restless and boiling. It seemed that they were welcoming something, but also seemed to be afraid of something. Well, that is, the 5 beauties of Tushan also looked into the distance at the same time. A voice suddenly came from the sky. I don't agree with this marriage. The cold shout exploded in the sky. All living beings in Tusk Mountain were surprised. Who dares to say that? Does he want to die? Could it be that some hot-blooded hothead wants to steal the bride again? Steal the bride? Who has the right to steal the bride in front of the god of war? Almost all the creatures looked at the source of the voice. In the distant sky, dark clouds swept over. Amidst the black clouds, a vague figure emerged and stepped out. Everyone's eyes were fixated on him. They wanted to know who was so daring. However, when the figure appeared, everyone was stunned. It was a kind of surprise that was completely unexpected. Tushan Wanwan, one of the 5 beauties, was even more dumbfounded. She thought that her eyes were hallucinating. Xiaohei. The figure that appeared was Yun Xiaohei, the cart driver who had gone missing. But now, Yun Xiaohei's aura and pressure made Tushan Wanwan feel extremely unfamiliar. It was the pressure of a supremacy. At the same time, there was also an aura that made all the Tushan foxes' bloodline restless. Is this a prodigy of the Tushan foxes? But why is he a black fox? Isn't the black fox the lowest tribe in the Tushan foxes? And his aura is at the supremacy stage. When did such a young prodigy appear in the Tushan foxes? Many of the sky prides present were at a loss. Prince and Lan, goddess Pu Kuei, and the others were also extremely confused. Even they didn't know the inside story. Yun Xiaohei ignored the gazes of the outside world. From the moment he appeared, his gaze had been fixed on Tushan Wanwan. Now, he finally had the confidence to face Tushan Wanwan, because he was one of the 6 kings of destruction. Wanwan, I finally have the right to be with you. I'm no longer the lowly little black fox from before. Yun Xiaohei couldn't contain his excitement. Although he had awakened extraordinary power, his personality was still the same. Yun Xiaohei, what are you talking about? Why did you run away? What have you experienced during this period of time? Tushan Wanwan was completely dumbfounded. Wanwan, I want to marry you. Other than me, no one else can have you. Yun Xiaohei's eyes burned with flames. That was the desire to monopolize. Tushan Wanwan was the goddess of white moonlight in his heart. Now, he finally had the right to marry his goddess. What nonsense are you talking about? You're just my coachman. Tushan Wanwan frowned. In the past, she had indeed taken in Yun Xiaohei out of pity. It was also a manifestation of her kindness. But she didn't expect Yun Xiaohei to have such expectations for her. It was fine if he had such expectations, but he even said it in public. If Jun Xiaoyaro heard this, how would it look? Yes, I'm indeed your coachman, but now, my status is different. I have the right to marry you. Yun Xiaohei's eyes were fervent. I don't care who you are, and I can't marry you. Your words will make the young master misunderstand. Tushan Wanwan was also anxious, for fear that Jun Xiaoyaro would misunderstand. She turned to Jun Xiaoyaro and said anxiously, Young master, he's just my coachman. I hope you don't misunderstand. I only have you in my heart. Tushan Wanwan's words made the excitement on Yun Xiaohei's face immediately stiffen. He turned his extremely cold eyes to Jun Xiaoyaro. Chapter 1030. Yun Xiaohei only had coldness toward Jun Xiaoyaro. If it weren't for Jun Xiaoyaro, Tushan Wanwan wouldn't have treated him like that. He said that Jun Xiaoyaro might have other intentions toward her. Tushan Wanwan even scolded him and didn't believe him at all. It could be said that in Yun Xiaohei's heart, Jun Xiaoyaro was the stumbling block between him and Tushan Wanwan. In the past, Yun Xiaohei couldn't compare with Jun Xiaoyaro at all. It was impossible to compare the two together. They were like two completely different existences. But now, Yun Xiaohei thought that he was qualified to take back Tushan Wanwan. After sensing Yun Xiaohei's cold hostility, Yun Xiaohei's expression changed drastically. Jun Xiaoyaro felt that he was unjustly implicated again. But he didn't care, because he was wary of Yun Xiaohei. Now it seemed that the situation was not beyond his expectations. And this is your groom? Jun Xiaoyaro didn't pay attention to Yun Xiaohei. Instead, he looked at Tushan Wanwan. Young master, I don't know how he became like this, but he is indeed just a groom. Tushan Wanwan approached Jun Xiaoyaro. She was wearing blue armor, and her curvaceous body was pressed against him. Yun Xiaohei's eyes were about to turn red when he saw this scene. The nicest attitude Tushan Wanwan had towards him was when she praised him for raising horses well. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, could easily get all of Tushan Wanwan's attention. Seeing his goddess sticking to someone else, Yun Xiaohei was about to explode. Boom! Behind Yun Xiaohei, endless black devil chi surged. Vaguely, it seemed to form a pitch-black demonic fox with a murderous aura and the power to destroy the world. Behind it, 10 fox tails swayed. That's almost all the Tushan foxes instantly felt a strong pressure from their bloodline. Plop! Tushan foxes kneeled on the ground one after another, trembling in fear. They didn't do it willingly, but their bodies seemed to be out of their control. Their souls were terrified of this kind of pressure. Not to mention ordinary Tushan foxes. Even the 5 Tushan beauties quivered simultaneously, as if they wanted to kneel down and worship him. No! Tushan Wan's face was pale. If she really knelt down in front of Yun Xiaohei, what kind of scandal would that be? Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyaro waved his sleeves and shielded the 5 princesses. Even the pressure that originated from his bloodline and soul had been completely isolated. Master Tilda sensing that the pressure was completely isolated, Tushan Wan was touched. The details would reveal the truth. Jun Xiaoyaro was really meticulous. She was also very good at taking care of people. Tushan Wanwan felt a sense of security that she had never felt before. Not only her, but the other 4 princesses also felt the pressure on them disappear completely. Countless pairs of beautiful eyes looked at Jun Xiaoyaro, all of them slightly glowing. There were quite a few powerful men in the other side. But most of them were male chauvinistic. There were very few men who were as meticulous as Jun Xiaoyaro and knew how to take care of women. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't expect that his casual actions would make the 5 princesses feel better about him. As for Tushan Mingfei, she was a divine venerable expert, so she naturally wouldn't lose her composure. However, she also felt a kind of pressure that originated from her bloodline. How is this possible? Bloodline mutation, 10-tailed black fox? Tushan Mingfei was in disbelief. The 10-tailed black fox was a mutant with a bloodline mutation. It was very powerful, but also very dangerous. Because it was too uncontrollable, and its bloodline was rare, it was extremely rare. Most of the black foxes now were ordinary and lowly foxes. It was impossible for there to be another 10-tailed black fox. How is it, Wanwan? Am I qualified to marry you now? Yun Xiaohei looked at the countless foxes who had submitted to him. He suddenly felt like a superior, a fox above a fox. That feeling of being able to make countless creatures tremble in fear with just a glance was too wonderful. If you think that I'll stick to you as long as you have the strength, you're wrong. Tushan Wanwan's eyes showed a hint of disgust. Indeed, she was attracted to Jun Xiaoyaro at first because of Jun Xiaoyao's mysteriousness and strength. But after a deep interaction with him, she realized that Jun Xiaoyaro attracted her not only because of his strength, his conversation style, personality, and meticulous mind to guide her cultivation. Jun Xiaoyaro was perfect, and she was attracted to him in every way. What was the difference between wanting to conquer a woman with strength and force? What I have is not only strength. Yun Xiaohei didn't have the slightest scruple. His abdomen was burning, and a dark hexagram mark was reflected in the sky. That's a hexagram mark. Could it be that he has one too? There was a moment of dead silence. Then there was an earth-shattering uproar. Another king of annihilation had appeared. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect to witness the appearance of another king of annihilation at this matchmaking convention. This was really a bit surreal. In such a short time, 3 kings of annihilation have appeared. It seems that this 10-tailed black fox is indeed qualified to be on par with the god of war. That's right. As a king of annihilation, he is indeed qualified. Once the identity of a king of annihilation was revealed, the situation was different. Previously, many people were still disdainful and guessing Yun Xiaohei's background. Now, there was only respect in the eyes of many creatures. After all, the 6 kings of annihilation were too important to the current foreign territory. They couldn't lose them. The corners of Yun Xiaohei's mouth curled up slightly. The feeling of being admired and respected by tens of thousands of people was too wonderful and made one feel bloated. However, he found that Tushan Wanwan's expression didn't change at all. Why, Wanwan? Is my identity not enough? Yun Xiaohei clenched his fists, and the veins on his forehead bulged slightly. He was already like this. Why was Tushan Wanwan still unaware? You don't know anything at all. I was blind to have picked you up as a coachman. Tushan Wanwan suddenly felt a little dispirited. It was originally a kind action. But in the end, it brought her such trouble. Most importantly, it also brought trouble to Jun Xiaoyaro. Young master, I'm sorry. It's all because of Wanwan that he targeted you. Tushan Wanwan was really afraid of causing trouble to Jun Xiaoyaro. It's okay. No one expected this to happen. Jun Xiaoyaro patted Tushan Wanwan's shoulder comfortingly. Tushan Wanwan was moved again. Young master is such a gentle person. Seeing this scene, Yun Xiaohei's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. You said that I didn't know anything, but now I know. It's because of him. As long as he's gone, everything can return to its original position. Yun Xiaohei's eyes locked on Jun Xiaoyaro. He could no longer suppress the jealousy in his heart. The cultivation of a supreme being erupted, and a destructive force was brewing. Yun Xiaohei rushed toward Jun Xiaoyaro. 10 fox tails spread out from his back and directly turned into 10 pitch-black spears, piercing toward Jun Xiaoyaro. As long as you die, everything can return to its original position. This powerful move was enough to tear apart some ordinary supreme beings in an instant. This was the power of the 10-tailed black fox of destruction. However, Jun Xiaoyao's body shook. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and a punch split the sky. Bang! The sky seemed to be split into two and exploded. There was the sound of vomiting blood. Yun Xiaohei's body was blasted away. His chest was split open, and blood splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, he was injured and looked a little embarrassed. "You're so noisy. Do you really think you're someone important?" Zhang Xiaoyao tilted his head slightly. His tone was flat and indifferent, as if he was talking to an ant. Chapter 1031. At this moment, Yun Xiaohei's chest had split open and was dripping with blood. One could even see his wriggling heart and other organs. The heaven-splitting fiend god fist was said to be able to split open the sky with a single punch. If Yun Xiaohei had not been protected by the power of the ten-tailed black fox, he would definitely have been split into two by this punch. Even so, Yun Xiaohei was in an extremely sorry state at this moment. The imposing aura that had covered the entire place had disappeared without a trace. This contrast caused the group of people to be speechless, not knowing what to say. They felt as if they had pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger, but in the end, they had really become a pig. How can this be? I have clearly awakened the power of the ten-tailed black fox. Yun Xiaohei himself was in a daze. It was as if 100,000 lightning bolts had struck his brain at the same time. We are both one of the 6 kings of destruction. Why am I weaker than you? Yun Xiaohei even suspected that he was a fake king of destruction. Could it be that he was a counterfeit? No, impossible. Yun Xiaohei would never admit that he was a counterfeit. When a person with a lowly status became a person above others, he would become a person above others. He would never allow himself to fall down again. I could have endured the darkness if I had never seen the sun. Yun Xiaohei had already seen the sun, so he could no longer endure the darkness from before. Surging power surged in Yun Xiaohei's body. The huge wound on his chest began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. I was just careless. Yun Xiaohei took out a treasure. It was a pitch-black wheel. It expanded rapidly in the wind and was incomparably huge. It was as if a black curtain of the sky was crushing down. As the wheel spun, it easily crushed the void. It was as if the entire world was going to be crushed into powder in front of this wheel. What a terrifying aura. What weapon is that? Everyone present felt as tiny as ants in front of the roulette. The one controlling the wheel was only Yun Xiaohei, who was at the supreme stage. If it were any other supreme expert, they would definitely have the power to destroy the world. Oh, as expected. Zhang Xiaoyao was not too surprised. On the contrary, it was within his expectations. The 6 Armageddon kings each had their own Armageddon forbidden artifact. This Armageddon forbidden artifact seemed to have its own secrets. Yun Xiaohei's world-destroying forbidden artifact must be this roulette. 10 Tails Heaven Annihilation Plate. Yun Xiaohei activated his exclusive forbidden artifact. Wisps of dark light spread out from the 10-tailed sky destruction disk. Each wisp of dark light tore the sky apart. Wherever it swept past, everything was disintegrated and annihilated, returning to the initial state of particles. If this forbidden artifact was in the hands of an immortal king, it could easily destroy a vast starfield. Die. Yun Xiaohei activated almost all of her strength, and the 10 foxtails behind her were dazzling. As the 10 Tails Heaven Annihilation Disk rotated, it emitted a dark light of annihilation as it charged towards Zhang Xiaoyao. Zhang Xiaoyao did not take out the god's weeping halberd. He didn't even take out the everlasting sword embryo. Because facing a coachman was not enough for him to use a weapon. In Zhang Xiaoyao's body, the cells were like worlds. They collided and burst out with earth-shattering sounds. The power of 520 Sumeru worlds was added to the fist. In addition, the laws of the physical body and the god-fiend great strength divine ability were added. Zhang Xiaoyao's fist was almost synonymous with power itself. Even before he punched out, the surrounding space was unable to withstand the terrifying power and directly collapsed without a sound. The fist struck out. Sky split. The vast sky for 100,000 miles seemed to have been shattered by the hand of an ancient god. All kinds of shattered space fragments flew in all directions. Seeing this, Tushan Mingfei hurriedly formed hand seals and activated the array under Tushan Mountain to resist the waves. Boom! A dull sound as if planets collided erupted. The 10-tailed sky destruction disk was directly sent flying by Jun Xiaoyao's punch and crashed into Yun Xiaohei. Poochie. Yun Xiaohei's body, which had just recovered, was severely injured again. Half of his body was smashed, and flesh and blood splattered. This almost took away half of Yun Xiaohei's life. Yun Xiaohei found it hard to accept. He said in disbelief, "Why? I'm also a king of destruction. Why is this still the result?" He had even used the forbidden weapon of destruction. Why was he still not Jun Xiaoyao's match? Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change. He said indifferently, "Although we are both kings of destruction, my ability is enough to kill you thousands of times. So, don't jump in front of me." Jun Xiaoyao's words were understated. But it was no different from a heavy hammer that ruthlessly smashed into Yun Xiaohei's heart, causing his Dao heart to collapse. And it was a crushing defeat in front of his goddess. The humiliation of being praised high and mighty and then smashed down was simply unbearable for Yun Xiaohei. Rather than that, he might as well not have this power in the first place. So as to avoid embarrassment, young master is indeed invincible. Seeing that even the 10-tailed black fox of destruction was defeated by Jun Xiaoyaro in a few moves. Tushan Wanwan's beautiful eyes were even brighter. As for Yun Xiaohei, who was severely injured and in a terrible state, it was too horrible to look at. Tushan Wanwan did not look at him again. If it was before, Tushan Wanwan would still take care of him for the sake of her coachman. But Yun Xiaohei's smug face made Tushan Wanwan completely disgusted. She wondered how she had picked up such a twisted bastard. Seeing that Tushan Wanwan did not even look at him, Yun Xiaohei's heart felt like it was being torn apart. It was heart-wrenching. Now, he and Tushan Wanwan had really become passers-by. Tushan Wanwan even viewed him with hostility and disgust. Yun Xiaohei's eyes were filled with deep resentment. Seeing Yun Xiaohei's piercing gaze, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were also cold. Unless he wanted to raise leeks, he always cut the weeds and dig up the roots. Jun Xiaoyao directly reached out his hand and tried to kill Yun Xiaohei. Seeing this scene, Tushan Mingfei opened her red lips and wanted to say something, but in the end, she did not say anything. Her mind was full of thoughts. No matter what, Yun Xiaohei was a member of the Tushan fox family and had awakened the 10-tailed black fox of destruction bloodline. He was very valuable to Tushan. The best result was that Jun Xiaoyaro and Yun Xiaohei both became Tushan's son-in-law. But now, Tushan Mingfei also knew that it was impossible. None of her 5 daughters looked at Yun Xiaohei directly. Even if it were her, if she had to choose between the two, she would choose Jun Xiaoyaro without hesitation. It was definitely not because he was handsome. In all aspects, Yun Xiaohei was like a nouveau riche. Coupled with his unstable mentality, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause in the future. Therefore, Tushan Mingfei sighed and wisely chose not to interfere. And at this moment, a cold snort was heard. Stop. The legendary 6 apocalyptic kings are actually killing each other. What a scandal. A few elders appeared, their auras powerful. They were all heavenly venerables and mystique venerables. Hey, that's the elder of the infernal imperial family. And the big shot of the Morgia family. That's the elder of the Jimeng family. Everyone was surprised. These were all powerhouses of the immortal imperial family, and now they all appeared. It seemed that they were here to support Yun Xiaohei. And they all had one thing in common. They were all forces that had a grudge against Jun Xiaoyao. Chapter 1032. Looking at these immortal emperor clans, Jun Xiaoyao was a little surprised. He looked at Yun Xiaohei and said, "That's right. I've indeed underestimated you." Yun Xiaohei activated the power of the Black Fox of Destruction in his body to recover from his injuries. He sneered and didn't say anything. Everyone probably thought that he was a hothead. Only Yun Xiaohei knew. He naturally wouldn't come alone to snatch the bride. Instead, he had made full preparations before this. He secretly used his identity as a world destroyer king to communicate with those immortal emperor clans who had a grudge against Jun Xiaoyao. Thus, he reached an agreement with them. These immortal emperor clans were naturally willing to build a good relationship with a world destroyer king. They might even be able to rope him in. Moreover, they all had a common enemy, Jun Xiaoyao. You only know that you're underestimating me now? Yun Xiaohe sneered. I originally thought that you were a complete idiot, but now it seems that you're just a little retarded, Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. What? Yun Xiaohe was so angry that his heart almost split open. Was this a compliment or a curse? Hearing this, the 5 beauties of Tushan couldn't help but cover their mouths and giggle. Sir, you don't speak much, but you're vicious. Could it be that you're from the Zuan clan? Tushan Chun couldn't help but laugh. The Zuan clan was also an immortal emperor clan of a foreign lineage. This clan was extremely strange. The living beings in this clan didn't have mothers. They reproduced asexually. Not only that, but they also hated any other matriarchal living beings. They often asked about the mothers of other clans. They were determined to turn all living beings in the world into orphans. Moreover, the Zuan clan's innate bloodline ability was the law of words. As the name implied, they could kill people with just their mouth. His clan's divine ability was incomparably powerful. It was unknown how many experts' mothers had been sprayed to death by this great divine ability. Therefore, this clan was also known as the Zuan Horse Hunters. Because Jun Xiaoyao's words were a little vicious, the 5 beauties of Tushan couldn't help but think of the Zuan clan. Of course, this was a joke. They knew that Jun Xiaoyao couldn't possibly be Zuan's subordinate. If that was the case, Tushan Mingfei would have been in danger long ago. Jun Xiaoyao looked at Yun Xiaohe and asked, "Do you know why I said that?" "That's because you're stupid. You think that just because you've found a few backers, you're confident. If I want to kill you, no one can stop me. How dare you?" The elders from both the Infernal Imperial Clan and the Morgia Imperial Clan shouted coldly. They had already shown up, yet Jun Xiaoyao still did not put them in his eyes. "Let's give it a try then." Jun Xiaoyao was just about to make his move when he sensed something all of a sudden and stopped in his tracks. "Since you're already here, why don't you show yourself?" Jun Xiaoyao's sudden words puzzled many people. "What are you trying to do?" Yun Xiaohe looked at him coldly. The atmosphere was silent. Amidst this quiet atmosphere, a voice rang out. A coquettish voice rang out. "Haha, First King, are you so familiar with news scent that you can smell it right away?" This voice was so seductive that it made one's heart go numb. The rift in the distance cracked open as a glamorous figure that was hiding within it revealed herself. In just a breath's time, that beautiful figure rushed to Jun Xiaoyao's side like a ghost. Her delicate body was very close to Jun Xiaoyao. Only then did Jun Xiaoyao see the appearance of the woman in front of him clearly. She was a woman with a face as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon. In terms of looks, she was definitely not inferior to the Tushan 5 beauties. Liu Yu's eyebrows were curved, and her skin was snow-white and supple. Every frown and smile exuded a moving charm. Her large eyes were watery and seductive. Her eyelashes were long, her nose was straight, and her lips were bright red. She was very sexy. Her figure was also very perfect. Her undulating curves were very tempting. Jun Xiaoyao's gaze unconsciously fell on this woman's chest. This caused the woman to say coquettishly, "First King, where are you looking at?" "Haha, interesting," Jun Xiaoyao said. On the woman's snow-white chest, there was a black 6-point star imprint very clearly engraved on it. The 6-point star marks of the other King of Destruction were either on their wrists or their abdomens. This woman's mark was imprinted on her chest, and it even moved up and down slightly. Naturally, the identity of this woman was as clear as day. She was also one of the 6 kings. However, the way she addressed Jun Xiaoyao made Jun Xiaoyao a little curious. First King, First King. It seems that this woman should know more information, Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. You are also one of the 6 King of Destruction. After sensing this woman's aura, Yun Xiaohe could not help but say. His words caused the world to boil again. What? Another King of Destruction has appeared. In this case, we have witnessed the gathering of 3 kings today, including Lord God of War's follower, Su Hongyi. There will be 4. As expected, the doomsday myth is about to become reality. Countless living beings were shocked beyond belief. They did not expect to witness the gathering of 3 King of Destruction today. This was definitely a historical moment. You are from the Isa clan? Prince Lan frowned slightly, as if he had thought of something, and said. Previously, he had discussed this with Goddess Pu Kuei. After Jun Xiaoyaro killed the God-Eater Emperor's son. The God-Eater clan wanted to seek justice, but they were stopped by another clan. That clan was the Isa clan. The Isa clan? Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the woman who was sticking close to him, seemingly quite dependent on him. He was surprised. He had also heard of the Isa clan. It was rumored that they were related to the Avacania lands. The one who created this clan was the mother goddess of the netherworld, Izanami. It could be said that they were extremely mysterious. This slave's name is Kagura. I've finally seen the first king's palace. The woman named Kagura had a sweet voice, and her smile was as beautiful as a flower. Do we know each other? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows. Although we're now reincarnated, Your Highness has saved Nunu more than once in the previous reincarnation cycle. Kagura leaned against Jun Xiaoyaro and spoke in a flirtatious tone. I see. Jun Xiaoyaro understood. The Armageddon 6 kings should be from the first king to the 6th king. And the bloodline of the first god of war should be the first king. The former ruler of that bloodline had saved the former ruler of Kagura's bloodline. Thus, due to fate, they had been entangled until now. Even after Kagura woke up, she still had a favorable impression of him, as well as a sense of dependence. Then he is. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Yun Xiaohei. That's the 5th king's bloodline. Your follower, Su Hongyi, is from the 6th king's bloodline, said Kagura. What about you? Your Highness, you're really forgetful. Nunu is from the 4th king's bloodline. Jun Xiaoyaro came to a realization. He finally understood everything. The first god of war was from the 1st king's bloodline. The mother goddess of the Isa clan was from the 4th king's bloodline. The 10-tailed black fox of destruction was from the 5th king's bloodline. Mahakala was from the 6th king's bloodline. Looking at it this way, the Armageddon 6 kings all represented the inheritance of an invincible warrior. The more Jun Xiaoyaro thought about it, the more he felt that the Armageddon 6 kings should have secrets. And this Kagura should know a lot. Chapter 1033. Now, with Kagura's appearance, the situation became even more treacherous. 3 world destroyer kings appeared at the same time. This was definitely a rare sight in the previous epochs. Although they hadn't fully matured yet. If they didn't die, it was almost certain that they would become immortal kings in the future. Seeing how close Kagura was to Jun Xiaoyaro, Yun Xiaohei had nowhere to vent his jealousy. Why were all the girls so nice to Jun Xiaoyaro? Why were they so proactive? Was he not as handsome as Jun Xiaoyaro? That seemed to be the case. F***ck. Yun Xiaohei couldn't even convince himself. Compared to Jun Xiaoyaro, he was indeed trash. Whether it was in terms of looks, strength, or personality, there was almost no comparison. First King's Palace, I think you shouldn't attack the 5th king for now, Kagura said as she leaned against Jun Xiaoyaro. This scene made Tushan Wanwan, Tushan Chun Chun, and the others' eyes sparkle. If it weren't for the fact that Kagura was from the Isa clan and a world destroyer king, they probably wouldn't have been able to resist pulling her away. Today was their matchmaking convention, all right? Oh, you're here to plead for him? Jun Xiaoyao's tone became colder. Kagura shook her head. Of course I'm not here for him. His position in my heart can't even compare to a single hair on First King's Palace's head. This made Yun Xiaohei vomit blood again. Damn it, if you want to suck up to me, then suck up to me. Why drag me down with you? You're getting stabbed even though you're lying down. Yun Xiaohei's heart was being stabbed. Then what do you mean? The 6th king still has his own mission, so it's best not to have any infighting. Of course, if First King's Palace really doesn't like it, you can also attack. I'm naturally on First King's Palace's side, Kagura said. Jun Xiaoyao's guess was correct. This girl knew some inside information. What mission? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. This. Kagura looked all around her. All right then. Jun Xiaoyaro lightly nodded. He knew that with so many people around, it would be difficult for Kagura to say anything. Since you said so, I'll give you some face and spare his life. How about that? To Jun Xiaoyao, Yun Xiaohei was an existence that could be easily killed. Whether it was earlier or later, Jun Xiaoyao didn't care at all. Moreover, he was also very interested in the mission of the Six Kings. Perhaps he could pry some secret information out of Kagura. The first prince's palace is still so considerate. Kagura was obviously delighted. Because Jun Xiaoyao had given her face. Yun Xiaohei had the urge to vomit blood again. With the protection of the infernal imperial clan's elders, he did not believe that Jun Xiaoyao would be able to do anything to him. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao took advantage of the situation. Not only did he have a way out, but he also casually flirted with Kagura. It could only be said that when it came to playing mind games with Jun Xiaoyao, Yun Xiaohei was simply the younger brother of the younger brother. He could be said to be the younger brother of the younger brother. Why aren't you scramming? Jun Xiaoyao glanced at Yun Xiaohei. Yun Xiaohei glanced at Tushan Wanwan. In the end, Tushan Wanwan didn't pay him any attention at all. Unwillingness and jealousy brewed in Yun Xiaohei's heart. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. With your talent, you're destined to become a king in the future. Don't be rash, the infernal imperial clan's elders advised through voice transmission. To be honest, they were shocked by Yun Xiaohei's performance. They thought that he was a chess piece that could rival Jun Xiaoyao. In the end, it was useless. In front of Jun Xiaoyao, he was still trash. This involuntarily caused the elders of the emperor clans to look down on Yun Xiaohei. However, Yun Xiaohei was the Terminator King after all, so they couldn't say anything. No matter how unwilling Yun Xiaohei was, he could only swallow his grievances. It was even to the extent that he didn't even dare to speak harshly before leaving dejectedly, and his back seemed to be in a sorry state. He came in high spirits. He left with a gloomy face. He thought that he was the destined one who stole the bride and won the beauty's heart. Who would have thought that when he looked back, he was the clown? After Yun Xiaohei left, the situation finally settled down. Kai Hongyu was a little absent-minded. It was as if he was still living in a dream. Jun Xiaoyao ignored him. It was fine as long as he got the Book of Souls. Hey, woman, shouldn't you keep your distance? Tushan Chun couldn't stand it anymore and yelled at Kagura. Oh my, are you jealous, little girl? Kagura smiled seductively. She was both sexy and charming. She had a charming temperament that moved one's heart. She was on par with the 5 beauties of the Tushan Mountains. This is the matchmaking convention we organized. Sir is the one we chose. Tushan Chun pursed her lips and felt a little wronged. Who was the main character of the matchmaking convention? All right, the dust must have settled now. I believe no one wants to challenge young Master Xiaoyao anymore, right? Tushan Mingfei said. Everyone fell silent. Who would dare to challenge Jun Xiaoyao? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? Ha ha, congratulations, brother. Prince Anlan was very tactful. He smiled and cupped his hands. Congratulations, brother, Goddess Pu Kuei also said. Congratulations, Lord War God. Voices sounded from all directions. If it were anyone else who wanted to monopolize the 5 beauties of the Tushan Mountains, they would definitely be angered and targeted by countless people. But since it was Jun Xiaoyao, no one felt unconvinced. Instead, they thought it was reasonable. Some of the women even thought. The 5 beauties of the Tushan Mountains and Jun Xiaoyao were considered to be of a higher social class. Such an immortal might not even appear in an entire epoch. It was only in this era of great strife that it would appear. I wonder what betrothal gifts Lord War God will give. All of a sudden, someone in the crowd exclaimed. Then, everyone fell silent. Jun Xiaoyao wanted to attend the ceremony. Why would he bring betrothal gifts? It's okay, we don't want them. We're already honored that young master doesn't dislike us, Tushan Wanwan hurriedly said. That's right. Tushan Chun nodded like a chick pecking rice. Kai Hongyu's face was completely twisted. Not only did they work hard to pass the 3 stages, but they also offered betrothal gifts. It was impossible to take back those betrothal gifts. However, now that it was Jun Xiaoyao, they didn't even want the betrothal gifts. They could even pay for it. This was also in line with the saying, if a woman really loved a man, she wouldn't stare at the betrothal gifts. Those women who only wanted a sky-high betrothal gift actually didn't care about the man at all. They only wanted to sell themselves at a good price. The 5 beauties of the Tushan Mountains were willing to pay for Jun Xiaoyao. As for other men, they couldn't be bothered to look at them even if they offered a sky-high betrothal gift. This world, Kai Hongyu's Dao heart completely collapsed. His mentality was unstable. He initially thought he was here to redeem himself, but he ended up being humiliated even more. He even lost the soul book. It was a complete failure. That's not a good idea. After all, we're already here. We should still give the betrothal gifts, Jun Xiaoyao said. He didn't mention the betrothal gifts. Jun Xiaoyao waved his sleeves. 5 drops of chaos blood essence landed on the 5 beauties. Chaos blood essence. The 5 beauties shuddered at the same time. It was definitely a rare artifact. Anyone would be envious of it. If they refined it, they might not be able to obtain the chaos flesh, but they would at least receive great benefit. It was more precious than any betrothal gift. Not only the 5 beauties of the Tushan Mountains, but the others were also amazed by Jun Xiaoyao's generosity. Jun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. There were many good things in his inner universe. The celestial tree, the immortal source ancestral vein, the foreign dragon vein, the spring of life, and the chi of creation. There was even the world tree. Even a leaf from it was enough to shock the world. However, Jun Xiaoyao obviously wouldn't take out those good things. There was no need for him to do so. At this moment, Tushan Mingfei also hesitated. Then, she stammered, I wonder, if Xiaoyao can give me a drop of chaos blood essence too? Senior Mingfei, you want my blood essence too? Jun Xiaoyao asked. Chapter 1034. Tushan Mingfei blushed. She, who was as mature as a peach, also felt embarrassed at this moment. She was not young and was already a mother, but she still acted like a little girl. However, the chaos essence blood was indeed very important to her. Because Tushan Mingfei had been stuck in the creation divine master realm for a long time. The next step was to break through to the chaos Dao master realm. If she could get the chaos essence blood, it would obviously be of great help to her breakthrough to the Chaos Dao Master Realm. And the Chaos body was so rare that there might not be one in an era, let alone the Chaos Essence blood. Now, Jun Xiaoyao was in front of her, and Tushan Mingfei naturally did not want to miss this opportunity. Hearing this, everyone had a strange look in their eyes. It sounded like there was nothing wrong with this. But they still felt that something was wrong. Okay. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. If he could use this to win over Tushan, it would not be a loss. Even if he could not win her over, at least he could build a good relationship with her. After all, Jun Xiaoyao did not lack essence blood. He forced a few drops of chaos essence blood from his heart again and shot it to Tushan Mingfei. Tushan Mingfei took it, and there was a touch of joy on her charming face. Thank you, Xiaoyao. Then, it should be time for the wedding banquet. Jun Xiaoyao was speechless for a moment. He was just here to be a bystander and harvest leeks. But it seemed that unknowingly, he had become the main character. Moreover, he really did not plan to marry a fox. And there were 5 of them at once. Sir. Tushan Chuanchuan's voice was soft, and she opened her big watery eyes and said coquettishly, Young master. Tushan Wanwan also felt uneasy. If Jun Xiaoyao were to turn them down in public, things would be awkward for them. Tushan Yeye, Tushan Daodao, and Tushan Xiaoxiao also stared at Jun Xiaoyao with their starry eyes. Jun Xiaoyao also felt that if he rejected them in public, it would be embarrassing for them. Then, everyone would be embarrassed. But it was impossible for him to solve the important matter of his life now. And it was impossible for him to do it with the 5 of them. Especially for Tushan Yeye and the others, it was their first time meeting. No matter how much of a scumbag Jun Xiaoyao was, he wouldn't be so casual. The biggest reason why they are looking for a groom is because of the immortal sutra that they cultivate. Let's see if there are any other methods when the time comes. Jun Xiaoyaro revealed an awkward but polite smile. At this moment, Kagura suddenly blew at Jun Xiaoyaro. Her breath smelled like orchids, and she said, "First prince, since you're looking for a groom, why don't you marry Nuo as well? Nu doesn't mind how many women you have. Anyway, it's not a big deal for an outstanding man to have a few women." Kagura was quite open-minded about this. Jun Xiaoyaro was completely speechless. For the first time, he realized how troublesome it was to be popular with girls. "All right, there's no time like the present. Why don't we get married right away?" Tushan Mingfei clapped her hands and said. "Great." Tushan Chun beamed. "I can." Tushan Wan blushed. "I don't mind either," Tushan Xiao said. "I'm so nervous." Tushan Dao looked down and twisted her fingers. "Then let me try." Tushan Yeye revealed a seductive smile. The 5 beauties had no objections. On the other hand, Jun Xiaoyaro felt a headache coming on. However, they were in public right now, so he could only muddle through for now. He'd have to improvise when the time came. Soon, the matchmaking convention turned into a marriage convention. Tushan was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and the atmosphere was joyous. All the beings who came to participate in the matchmaking convention became guests. As for Kai Hongyu, he left alone, and his back looked very lonely. It wasn't hard to imagine that this matter had dealt him a huge blow, and he wouldn't be able to recover from it for a long time. He would be immersed in Jun Xiaoyao's shadow. However, no one paid attention to the losers anymore. The 5 princesses of Tushan Mountain had all changed into bright red wedding dresses, wearing phoenix crowns and robes. Their lips were dyed red, and they put on a little makeup, but they were already extremely beautiful. The 5 brides appeared at the same time, and they were the most beautiful. Heaven and earth had become their background. Apart from Kagura, there weren't many women present who could compare to them. Even goddess Pu Kue wasn't as beautiful as her. "That's 5 times the happiness," a prodigy said enviously. "If you were as powerful as Lord War God, you could be 10 times or even 100 times happier," someone joked. I can't compare. But can Lord War God take it? Are you looking down on the primordial chaos body?" The atmosphere was quite harmonious. Jun Xiaoyaro was wearing a white robe, and he didn't change into a red robe. To him, this was merely a perfunctory act to avoid embarrassing the Tushan imperial family. His real wedding banquet could only be held when he was willing to do so. And when he got married, it would probably be a grand wedding ceremony on the level of an epoch. Of course, that would have to wait until he became a great emperor. Otherwise, how could he protect his woman if he didn't have the strength? Although Jun Xiaoyaro had the backing of the Jun family, the Jiang family, and other top-tier forces, he didn't have to worry about his safety. However, Jun Xiaoyaro still wanted to protect the woman he loved with his own strength, rather than relying on the power of his family. In this regard, Jun Xiaoyaro was still a bit of a male chauvinist. A man should protect his woman. While Jun Xiaoyaro was deep in thought, the wedding banquet had already begun. Perhaps because they saw through Jun Xiaoyao's intentions, Tushan didn't have any red tape. There was also no ceremony of husband and wife bowing to each other. A hint of disappointment flashed through the eyes of Tushan Wanwan and the other women. However, when they thought about how Jun Xiaoyaro was taking care of their feelings, they liked Jun Xiaoyaro even more. The wedding banquet lasted for 3 days. After 3 days, all the guests left. It was not hard to imagine just how envious Jun Xiaoyaro would be when the news got out. Jun Xiaoyaro had a headache. He didn't know how Luo Xiangling would feel when he heard the news. Next, it was time to enter the bridal chamber. Before entering the bridal chamber, Jun Xiaoyaro called Kagura over. "Don't leave yet. I'll ask you something later," Jun Xiaoyaro said. "Of course. Unless your highness chases me away, I won't be willing to leave," Kagura said softly. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded. After that, when it was time to enter the bridal chamber, Jun Xiaoyaro felt like he was going to the battlefield. No, or maybe the two were the same. Because entering the bridal chamber and going to the battlefield were both necessary. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. He was still a virgin. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro was led to the back of Tushan Palace by two pretty maids. There was a continuous stretch of palaces, and it was also the residence of some noble foxes. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro being led away, Tushan Mingfei breathed a sigh of relief. Her daughter's life event was finally resolved. But for some reason, there was a faint melancholy in her heart. When I was born, you weren't born. When you were born, I was already old. Tushan Mingfei sighed. If Jun Xiaoyaro was born in her era, perhaps she would have fallen head over heels for him. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro soon arrived at a luxurious palace. The door was pushed open, and Jun Xiaoyaro entered alone. Inside, red candles flickered, and gauze curtains hung down. In the middle of the room, there was a large round red bed. Not to mention 5 people, even 50 people could sleep on it. There was no problem for many people to exercise. Beside the bed, 5 beautiful women with phoenix crowns and robes were sitting dignified. Even Tushan Chun, who had the most eccentric personality, was a little nervous. Her lively personality was gone. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's arrival, the women had different thoughts. At this moment, the system's mechanical voice sounded in Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Ding, congratulations to the host, you have arrived at the check-in location. Do you want to sign in? Sign in. Jun Xiaoyaro said in his heart. Ding, congratulations to the host, you have received an 8-star reward, a man's gift pack. A man's gift pack, what's that? Jun Xiaoyaro was confused. This was the first time he had received a gift pack reward. And it was an 8-star gift pack. Chapter 1035. This was the first time Jun Xiaoyaro had received such a gift bag as a check-in reward. Let's open it and see what treasures are inside. Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. Ding. Congratulations to host for obtaining the mystic young treasured pestle. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was a little strange when he heard this. This pestle, is it serious? Jun Xiaoyaro complained in his heart. However, the items in the gift bag were not finished. Ding. Congratulations to host for obtaining the indestructible kidney. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't know what to say. At the beginning of his cultivation, when he was cultivating the 5 great divine treasures, his kidney divine treasure was stronger than the other divine treasures. It could be said that it was abnormally strong. Now with the addition of the indestructible kidney, it was almost like a perpetual motion machine. Ding. Congratulations to host for obtaining the Su Lady Immortal Sutra. This reward made Jun Xiaoyao's mind focus. No wonder it was an 8-star reward. It turned out that there was an Immortal Sutra in it. Any Immortal Sutra was priceless. The 3 Lives Immortal Sutra, which Jun Xiaoyaro used to train his primordial spirit, was also something he obtained through check-ins. However, was this Su Lady Immortal Sutra a proper Immortal Sutra? Jun Xiaoyaro stood on the spot. He could feel an indescribable power being added to every part of his body. Mystic Young Treasured Pestle, as the name implied, understood everything. There was no need to explain anything. This was definitely something that all men dreamed of. To Jun Xiaoyaro, however, that was nothing more than icing on the cake. Because he was already strong enough. Interestingly, this Mystic Young Treasured Pestle could also bring about Mystic Young Essence. For women, this was a nourishing sacred item, more precious than any immortal pill. It was enough to make any woman go crazy. As for the indestructible kidney, there was no need to mention it. Even his grandfather, Jun Zhantian, was envious of Jun Xiaoyao's kidney. Now, it was just icing on the cake. As for the Su Lady Immortal Sutra, Jun Xiaoyaro roughly glanced at it. It was indeed as he expected. It was an immortal sutra that taught dual cultivation methods. Jun Xiaoyaro was interested in this. There would be a time when he could use it in the future. However, this gave Jun Xiaoyaro some inspiration. If he could figure out some methods from the Plain Lady Immortal Scripture, would he be able to help the Tushan Fox family improve their Love Dream Immortal Scripture? After all, there were similarities between the two. Both of them required a man and a woman to cultivate together. In addition, Jun Xiaoyaro possessed the Battle God Catalogue. It wasn't completely impossible for him to analyze and dismantle the Immortal Sutra. His talent was monstrous enough. Young master, are you daydreaming? Tushan Wanwan asked tentatively. What do you mean by dazed? You must be dazed by our beauty. Tushan Yeye giggled. The 5 sisters were all dressed up and each one was as beautiful as a flower. Perhaps there wasn't a single man who wouldn't be dazed upon seeing them. However, they had really misunderstood Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro had seen countless beauties and was already immune to them. After coming back to his senses, Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Because he already had a solution to the problem in his heart, he was completely relaxed. However, the system gave him a man gift pack at this time. It was really warm and considerate. Unfortunately, Jun Xiaoyaro was destined to not use it now. Sir, what are you waiting for? Tushan Chuanchuan's face was filled with shyness, no longer as lively and playful as before. Seeing Tushan Chun, Jun Xiaoyaro really felt a little embarrassed. The other 4 girls were one thing. Tushan Chun, this white-haired lowly, really gave people a feeling of committing a crime. Although in this world, no one would drag him to jail. But there was still a barrier in his heart. Seeing that Jun Xiaoyaro didn't step forward, Tushan Yeye suddenly revealed an ambiguous smile and said, What, could it be that the famous war god is still a virgin? Although the 5 sisters were all virgins. But they didn't think that Jun Xiaoyaro was also a virgin. Such an outstanding man, not to mention women liking him. Even if he had a harem of 3,000 beauties, they wouldn't be surprised at all. Of course I am. Jun Xiaoyaro was very honest. There was nothing to hide. Really? Tushan Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes widened. Even Tushan Wanwan was very surprised. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro really didn't lack women by his side. Fei Qingxue, Luo Xiangling, and even Su Hongyi, who he picked up, were all delicate and charming. Tushan Wanwan also thought that Jun Xiaoyaro had a woman before. Although there was a knot in her heart, she didn't mind. Because the fox race's thinking was still not the same as the human race's. Hehe, how interesting. How about let me help you? Although it's my first time, I've read a lot of picture books. Sheep on the Tree, Mystic Cicada, White Tiger, Wild Horseleap, I know a little. Tushan Yeye licked her red lips and said seductively. Are you testing my temperament? Jun Xiaoyaro was still calm. Although he was inexperienced, his mentality was already experienced. Then, young master, can you take it? Tushan Yeye unconsciously puffed out her chest. In terms of figure, Tushan Yeye was worthy of being the eldest sister of the 5 sisters. Perhaps only her mother, Tushan Mingfei, could compare to her. Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly, Eldest princess, you are indeed big. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's slightly teasing tone, Tushan Yeye blushed, but she still smiled charmingly. It seems that young master is not a saint who can't sit still. You are also a lecherous pervert. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and said, everyone has the heart to love beauty. A fair lady is a good match for a gentleman. Isn't it a pity that a delicate flower is not appreciated by others? Jun Xiaoyaro was frank. He had never boasted of being a saint, a gentleman, or Liu Xiaohui. But appreciation was one thing. Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't casually push a girl down. After all, in addition to using his kidney, he also needed to use his heart. Jun Xiaoyaro could indeed charm countless girls, but he didn't want to become a human cannon. Sir, do you dislike Chun Chun for being small? Tushan Chun Chun stuck to him. Young master, come. Tushan Wanwan did the same. Jun Xiaoyaro was pressed onto the bed by the 5 beauties. He didn't expect that he would be the one pushed down. The 5 beauties of Tushan were like 5 juices. Young master, don't worry. Although it's our first time, we will serve you with all our hearts. Tushan Yeye pressed her hand on Jun Xiaoyao's chest. Being surrounded by 5 foxes, if it was any other man, his bones would definitely melt and he wouldn't think about anything else. Everyone, wait. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed the 5 beauties away with a gentle force. Young master. As expected, you don't like us. Tushan Wanwan was very disappointed. Young master, just scold me a little. Don't shut me out, Tushan Daodao, who was the most timid and had the weakest aura, said. I know that the main reason you are looking for a husband is because the immortal sutra of love and dream that you cultivate needs to be with a man entwined with the red string of marriage. If I can improve your sutra, you won't have to rely too much on men in the future. You can cultivate on your own, Jun Xiaoyaro said. His words stunned the 5 beauties on the spot. Chapter 1036. Modify the Immortal Sutra of Loving Love. The 5 beauties looked at each other. Then, Tushan Yeye burst into laughter. Sir, don't make fun of us. How can an ordinary person modify something like an immortal sutra? Tushan Xiaoxiao added, Yeah, sir, it's not that we don't believe you, but it's a bit unbelievable. The Immortal Sutra was a top cultivation method. Even among the imperishable forces, it was a treasure that couldn't be taught to outsiders. It was very difficult for ordinary prodigies to study it. Even they, who had cultivated the Immortal Sutra of Loving Love for a long time, only understood 30% of it. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro said he wanted to modify the Immortal Sutra of Loving Love. To put it nicely, it was unbelievable. To put it bluntly, it was daydreaming. What, you don't believe me? Or do I want to cheat you of your Immortal Sutra? Jun Xiaoyaro raised an eyebrow. Of course not. Sir, you're very powerful and have mastered all kinds of cultivation methods. Why would you want our Immortal Sutra? Tushan Wanwan hurriedly said. Among the 5 sisters, she was the one who interacted with Jun Xiaoyaro the most. When Jun Xiaoyaro gave her pointers, he would occasionally perform techniques and spells that dazzled even her eyes. Jun Xiaoyao's foundation was much deeper than theirs. Why would he care about an Immortal Sutra? If you don't mind, can you let me have a look? I won't teach it to outsiders. If it's still not enough, I can give you an Immortal Sutra in exchange. Jun Xiaoyao's words made the 5 beauties speechless again. Something as rare as an Immortal Sutra could be easily taken out for an exchange. We believe you, sir, but... Tushan Chun wanted to say something, but stopped. Her face was as red as an apple. You. Jun Xiaoyaro was speechless. Tushan Yeye's beautiful eyes flashed. Sir, do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? What do you mean? Jun Xiaoyaro was confused. The Immortal Sutra of Loving Love cultivated by the Tushan Fox clan is inscribed on the body. If young master wants to read the immortal scripture, doesn't that mean you want to see our bodies? Jun Xiaoyaro was slightly surprised by Tushan Yeye's words. He knew that some immortal sutras would be engraved in the flesh, bones, and blood vessels. However, this was the first time he had encountered one. Young master, if you want to see our bodies, just say it. Why do you have to be so secretive? We're already yours anyway. Tushan Xiaoxiao rolled her eyes at Jun Xiaoyao, looking extremely charming. I'm not. Don't talk nonsense. Jun Xiaoyao immediately denied it 3 times in a row. Hihi, it doesn't matter if it's real or fake. Since you're already on the bed, let's just leave it at that. As the eldest sister, Tushan Yeye was the most open one. However, this openness was only limited to the only man she approved of. Tushan Yeye took off her red dress. Her skin was as tender as cream, as smooth as cream, and as white as snow. Under the illumination of the candlelight, her skin seemed to glow. Her figure was even better. One word, absolute. It's really easy to give birth. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Tushan Yeye's plump figure and thought to himself. With Tushan Yeye taking the lead, the other 4 women naturally took off their clothes with blushing faces. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm and he didn't avoid it. He admired it as he should. Tushan Yeye was plump. Tushan Yeye was pink and tender. Tushan Xiaoxiao was fair. Tushan Wanwan was well proportioned. Tushan Yeye was pure and small. Each had their own beauty. It had to be said that this scene was a test of a man's willpower. 5 golden flowers, looking as if they were ready to be plucked. As long as Jun Xiaoyaro was willing, 5 times the happiness would be at his fingertips. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was calm. He knew what to do and what not to do. Being stared at like that by Jun Xiaoyaro, even Tushan Yeye, who was the most casual of them all, blushed. Let's begin, Jun Xiaoyaro said. The 5 beauties calmed down and activated the Immortal Sutra of Passion at the same time. Suddenly, countless mysterious runes appeared on their snow-white bodies. They weren't human characters, but demon runes. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was smart and talented. He was familiar with the languages of thousands of races in the Jun family's library since he was young. So there were no obstacles. This part, Jun Xiaoyaro approached Tushan Yeye and carefully stared at the runes on a certain part of her body. Young master, you, even Tushan Yeye secretly bit her red lips. This was too shameful. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the immortal sutras on Tushan Daodao, Tushan Xiaoxiao, and the others and compared them with each other. Lift it up, Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly said to Tushan Chun Chun. Tushan Chuan Chuan's head was full of question marks. Then, she was so embarrassed that her face turned red like an apple. It wasn't that Jun Xiaoyaro was deliberately teasing her. At this moment, he was immersed in comprehending the immortal sutra of passion. Through the war god catalogue, he was deconstructing this immortal sutra. This was an absolutely impossible task for ordinary people. But Jun Xiaoyaro wanted to complete it in the shortest time possible. One could imagine how difficult it was. This was also why the 5 beauties of Tushan thought that Jun Xiaoyaro was joking. Now, Tushan Yeye and the others were even more certain that Jun Xiaoyaro was teasing them. Could it be foreplay? Tushan Yeye thought. Some humans like to do such fancy things. They would never go straight to the home plate. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the outside world, Tushan Mingfei looked at the palace that was still closed, and a strange expression appeared on her face. It's been 10 days. Is he still not out? However, on second thought, if they came one by one, it would indeed take time. It's so good to be young. Tushan Mingfei sighed. Outside Tushan, there were also many foreign creatures waiting to watch the show. Oh my God, it's been 10 days. Why hasn't he come out at all? If it were you, would you be willing to come out after only 10 days? That's true. If I die under a peony, I'll still be a romantic ghost. But to be honest, the chaos body is indeed strong. After all, Tushan foxes are famous for their strong desires. Many people were whispering to each other, wanting to see when Jun Xiaoyaro would come out of his tender home. Meanwhile, in one of the pavilions, there was a flawlessly beautiful woman who had been waiting there all this while. It was none other than Kagura of the Iza clan. It's already been 10 days. First King's Palace, don't leave me with nothing. What will I do then? Kagura rolled her eyes and sighed in self-pity. Just as the outside world was filled with curiosity, Jun Xiaoyaro had finally deconstructed the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra. Even if he couldn't completely comprehend it, he had at least grasped most of it. That's enough. Please don't disturb me for the time being. Next, Jun Xiaoyaro had to pass the Battle God catalogue and display his monstrous talent. He combined and improved the Passion Dream Immortal Scripture and the Plain Lady Immortal Scripture. From there, he would change the cultivation shackles of the Passion Dream Immortal Scripture. Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's confident look, the 5 women all looked at him. They all had strange expressions. Young master, are you sure this isn't foreplay? Tushan Yeye asked. What foreplay? Jun Xiaoyaro was confused. Jun Xiaoyaro then sat down alone with his legs crossed. You're really going to improve the immortal scripture without us 5 delicate beauties? Tushan Yeye didn't know what to say. As long as young master is willing, I will support you, Tushan Wanwan said. But I really don't like you because of the Passion Dream Immortal Scripture. Tushan Chun Chun pursed her cherry lips. At first, perhaps she did have a good impression of Jun Xiaoyaro because of the red string of marriage. But after spending some time together, she was really impressed by Jun Xiaoyao's personal charm. Even if she didn't cultivate the Passion Dream Immortal Scripture, she would still like him. Let's see what young master can do first. If it doesn't work, you'll still be eaten by us sisters. Tushan Yeye licked her sexy red lips. Chapter 1037. To be honest, let's not talk about whether Jun Xiaoyaro lusted after their bodies. But they were indeed lusting after Jun Xiaoyao's body. At least Tushan Yeye was very thirsty. After all, she had the chaotic physique and was still a virgin. If she could dual cultivate with Jun Xiaoyaro, the benefits would be endless. Not to mention that the Love Dream Immortal Sutra would make huge progress. All of her attributes would improve. As one of the top 5 physiques among the 3,000, and even second place, how could the chaotic physique be ordinary? However, since Jun Xiaoyaro didn't have the intention, they couldn't force him. The main reason was that they didn't have the ability to force Jun Xiaoyaro. In the following time, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to deduce the 2 immortal sutras. Even a quasi-emperor would have to spend a lot of time on this. Therefore, Tushan Yeye and the other girls didn't think that Jun Xiaoyaro could complete it in such a short time. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. In the outside world, even Tushan Mingfei was speechless. This time was too long. Are young people nowadays so energetic? Tushan Mingfei was a little curious. However, she was curious, and she naturally couldn't pry. She also ordered that no one was to disturb him. In the outside world, the noise was even louder. Oh my God, 5 beauties, 3 months. The god of war is really powerful in all aspects, a male genius said enviously. There were also women who were extremely envious. They were naturally envious of the Tushan 5 beauties. If the god of war can favor me, even if I can only experience it once, I will have no regrets in this life. Many women were looking forward to it. Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly became the husband of everyone. In the bedroom. It was different from the imagination of the outside world. Jun Xiaoyaro had been sitting cross-legged for 3 months. The 5 beauties didn't leave, but observed Jun Xiaoyaro. From time to time, they would play with each other, which was quite pleasing to the eye. Finally, Jun Xiaoyaro opened his eyes. Even with his monstrous talent, there was a hint of fatigue on his face at this moment. This kind of thing consumed a lot of mental power. If Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't a primordial spirit of 3 lives, he might not be able to withstand it. Young master. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro open his eyes, the 5 beauties approached him. Next, I'll teach you a spell. Try it out first, Jun Xiaoyaro said. As he pointed his finger forward, 5 streaks of light entered the snow-white foreheads of the 5 beauties. Instantly, in the minds of the 5 beauties, all kinds of mysterious scriptures were shining brightly. They were like the stars in the sky, shining brightly. The 5 beauties shuddered at the same time. Even Tushan Yeye, who didn't believe in Jun Xiaoyaro at first, took a deep breath. Her chest rose and fell like waves. How could that be? Tushan Yeye lost her composure. Although this scripture had the feeling of the love dream immortal scripture, it was completely different. Most importantly, there was no need to bind all hope to the person who pulled the red string of marriage like before. In fact, he didn't even need to truly like the other party to be able to borrow the other party's various bloodline powers to cultivate. The modified Passion Dream Immortal Sutra had become even more domineering and convenient. Most importantly, there were no more shackles. For the Tushan Fox clan, the biggest shackle of the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra was that it was difficult to find the destined person. Jun Xiaoyao's modified version of the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra completely fixed this flaw. Although it looked like it had become a demonic scripture, they were demons. However, they were demons to begin with, so there was no need for them to demand so much. How is that possible? It's only been 3 months. Tushan Xiaoxiao was also very surprised. If mother knows, she'll be very surprised too. Tushan Wanwan's chest rose and fell. She couldn't calm down. After a preliminary examination, they found that this immortal sutra wasn't fake. They could completely cultivate it. 5 pairs of dazzling eyes were fixed on Jun Xiaoyao, shining as brightly as the stars. Jun Xiaoyao had completely exceeded their expectations. Jun Xiaoyao smiled. He didn't only combine the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra with the Plain Lady Immortal Sutra. He also incorporated a part of the essence of the life sacrificial oration. He even incorporated some characteristics of the Tao Heart Demonic Seed Mantra. It could be said that if Jun Xiaoyaro didn't have a strong foundation and many cultivation techniques, he wouldn't have been able to cultivate it. No matter how talented he was, he wouldn't have been able to study this modified version of the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra. In fact, Jun Xiaoyaro could also do some tricks in this Immortal Sutra. After the Tushan Fox clan cultivated it, he could easily control their lives. However, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't do that. First of all, Tushan Wanwan and the others were good to him. Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't dig a hole for people who were good to him. Second of all, there were immortal kings in Tushan. Although Jun Xiaoyaro could secretly do something, if he was discovered, Jun Xiaoyaro would be completely cut off from Tushan. They might even become enemies. Jun Xiaoyaro was thinking about how to pull Tushan to his side and even join the emperor's court. Therefore, to be safe, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't do anything. After that, the 5 beauties tried to cultivate for a while. They were pleasantly surprised to find that this was indeed a feasible path. It would have a huge impact on the entire Tushan. Sir, you are really Tushan's lucky star. Tushan Chun gave Jun Xiaoyaro a big hug. The other 4 beauties also approached Jun Xiaoyaro. Alright, since the problem of your cultivation techniques has been solved, you won't be restrained by the red string of marriage in the future. You can cultivate without worry, Jun Xiaoyaro said. The land of warmth, the tomb of heroes. There was no way Jun Xiaoyaro was going to indulge himself in the bedchamber. He still had a lot of things to do in the foreign realm. Sir, actually, I didn't choose you because of the Passion Dream Immortal Sutra. Tushan Wanwan's expression was sad. Chun too. Tushan Chun put on an obedient and pitiful look. TSK, sir, your attitude really hurts us 5 sisters. Tushan Yeye also sighed. You are all good girls. It's just that I have an obsession in my heart that I can't let go of for now. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed. He wouldn't persuade the 5 beauties to find other men. But now, he couldn't stay here. Ah, who is it that can make a peerless figure like you so obsessed? I really want to meet him, Tushan Yeye said. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and didn't say anything. He did have people in the immortal realm that he cared about. But what he cared about the most now was the whereabouts of his father, Jun Wuhui. Alright, we won't force you, Tushan Yeye said. The main thing was that they couldn't force him. Jun Xiaoyaro was too strong. They couldn't push him down at all. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and got up to leave the bedroom. Looking at Jun Xiaoyao's back, Tushan Dao revealed a trace of pity. Big sis, are we really going to give up just like that? Sisters, what do you all say? Tushan Yeye looked towards the 4 girls. In this life, apart from the young master, there is no one else. Tushan Wanwan said firmly. Me too. Tushan Chun said in a cute and naive manner. In the past, I indeed met a man as outstanding as him. That person was called Jun Xiaoyaro. Unfortunately, he's gone. Now, there probably isn't a man more outstanding than him. Tushan Xiao said. I'm the same as everyone else. Tushan Dao said. Alright, since us 5 sisters have the same goal, then we'll use both hard and soft tactics. We can't let this little fresh meat go. Let's see who can outlast who. Tushan Yeye licked her lips. The 5 sisters wouldn't have any other men in this life. They were definitely going to eat Jun Xiaoyaro. Chapter 1038. After 3 months, Jun Xiaoyaro finally came out of the palace. The 3 months of dark and tiring days were finally over. Jun Xiaoyaro also breathed a sigh of relief. He finally solved the problem of the 5 foxes. But what he didn't know was that the 5 foxes had already defeated him. Swoosh! A fragrant wind blew in front of Jun Xiaoyaro, and a plump and beautiful woman appeared in front of him. It was Tushan Mingfei. Son-in-law, how do you feel? Tushan Mingfei was very curious. Even she was a little impatient after waiting for 3 months. Tired. Jun Xiaoyaro simply uttered a single word. How could he not be tired after 3 months of studying and improving the immortal sutra of love and dream? It's been hard on you, son-in-law. After all, the workload is really heavy. Thinking of her 5 ferocious daughters, even Tushan Mingfei showed an apologetic look on her face. Look at what they've done to him. That's true. After all, I've been working day and night without a moment of rest, Jun Xiaoyaro said with a sigh. How can this be? Don't you even have time to rest? Tushan Mingfei's red lips opened slightly, and she was a little stunned. His 5 daughters had gone too far. They didn't even give him a moment of rest. I can't rest. If I rest, all my previous efforts will be wasted, Jun Xiaoyaro said in a serious tone. If the improvement of the Immortal Sutra was interrupted or even interrupted, it would obviously be more difficult to continue. All my previous efforts will be wasted? You mean? Tushan Mingfei was confused. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. There's already a result. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. In 3 months, the improvement of the Immortal Sutra of Love and Dream was completed. What? There's a result so soon? It's only been 3 months. Tushan Mingfei was stunned. Was pregnancy so fast? Of course. The 5 of them will come out soon, and we can tell you, Jun Xiaoyaro said with a smile. The 5 beauties of Tushan had all cultivated the improved version of the Immortal Sutra, so there was no problem. I need some time alone. Tushan Mingfei covered her forehead with her hand, feeling a little unreal. Am I going to be a grandmother so soon? Her son-in-law's marksmanship was too accurate. Not long after, Tushan Yeye and the other 4 girls all walked out of the palace. Tushan Mingfei rushed up and stared at her 5 daughters. Her eyes were filled with concern and blame. You guys, seriously, can't you let me have a good rest? There are only cows that die of exhaustion, and no fields that are ruined by plowing. Also, are you really pregnant? Hearing Tushan Mingfei's words, the 5 beauties were all stunned. Then, he slowly typed a question mark. Grandson? Am I going to have a grandson? Tushan Mingfei asked eagerly. This was her grandson who possessed the bloodline of the primal chaos physique. It would be strange if she wasn't worried. At this moment, the 5 beauties suddenly understood, and their cheeks became as red as fire. Mother, what are you talking about? The 5 beauties were speechless. Then, he explained. Tushan Mingfei paused. She blushed as well. He felt that he had made a big mistake and completely misunderstood the situation. She and Jun Xiaoyaro were chatting across servers. In the past 3 months, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't push down the 5 beauties at all. He only pushed them slightly when he was visualizing the Immortal Sutra of Love and Dream. He pushed them, but he didn't push them down completely. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro also gave the improved version of the Immortal Sutra of Love and Dream to Tushan Mingfei. Tushan Mingfei was astonished. How is it possible? How can it change like this? Tushan Mingfei was completely shocked. Was this something that a supreme being could do? Her son-in-law was really an immortal. With this improved version of the Immortal Sutra of Love and Dream, I believe that in the future, Tushan will be able to break free from the shackles of the cultivation method and be completely free. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. This is a serious matter. I need to report it to the king. Tushan Mingfei's expression was solemn. She took out a jade slip and started to send a message. The look in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed when he heard that. The king that Tushan Mingfei mentioned should be the immortal king of Tushan. Jun Xiaoyaro also had foresight and didn't tamper with the Immortal Sutra. Otherwise, the result would be unpredictable. The immortal king didn't always stay in the ancestral land. Most of the time, he stayed in some paradise. Even his clansmen wouldn't easily disturb him under normal circumstances. But this matter was too serious. Tushan Mingfei had to report it. Not too long later. Suddenly, a red line fell from the void and wrapped around Jun Xiaoyao's wrist. Seeing this scene, Tushan Mingfei and the 5 beauties were shocked. They couldn't help but say, that's, at this moment, a charming and cold female voice rang in Jun Xiaoyao's ears. Young friend, I, Tushan, owe you a favor for this. In the future, if you encounter any trouble, pull this red line. I am willing to help you unconditionally once. Greetings, Your Majesty. Tushan Mingfei and the 5 beauties all knelt when they heard this voice. This was the voice of the immortal king of Tushan, the 9-tailed king, Consort Defy. Consort Defy was of the supreme 9-tailed holy fox bloodline and also the pillar of Tushan. Previously, even when the 10-tailed black fox of destruction appeared, Consort Defy didn't react at all. But now, she was shocked by Jun Xiaoyao's improved version of the Immortal Sutra and even promised a favor. This was definitely a supreme honor for outsiders who weren't of the Fox clan. Thank you, Senior 9-tailed King. Jun Xiaoyaro cupped his hands slightly toward the void. 3 months of hard work in exchange for the kindness of the immortal king and the condition of helping once. It was definitely a great deal. To Jun Xiaoyaro, This was a profitable business with minimal capital. But thinking about it, Jun Xiaoyao's improved version of the Immortal Sutra had a great impact on Tushan. It didn't make Tushan abandon the Immortal Sutra of Love and Dream, but it also helped them break their shackles. It was normal for Jun Xiaoyao to receive such treatment. Young master is indeed young master. He can do earth-shattering things wherever he goes. The five beauties' eyes became even brighter. They now regretted letting Jun Xiaoyao leave the palace. The red line on Jun Xiaoyao's wrist temporarily disappeared. Jun Xiaoyao had a feeling that this red line would be of great help to him in the future. The matter in Tushan had come to an end. Ladies, I have something to do later and have to return to the Ars Academy. See you later. Jun Xiaoyao cupped his hands slightly toward the five beauties. Gentle and elegant, modest gentlemen. Chun Chun, Wan Wan, and the others were reluctant to part with Jun Xiaoyao, but they couldn't force him to stay here. We will also return to the Ars Academy later, Tushan Wan Wan said. We will also look for you then, Tushan Yeye said with a smile. They wouldn't give up on pursuing Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao left Tushan. As soon as he appeared, the outside world was in an uproar. He's finally out. It's been 3 months. It's not just 1, but 5. How difficult is it to feed them? Awesome. He's our role model. We are going to build a temple for the Ars Academy. Every day, before sex, we will worship him first. Looking at the uproar, Jun Xiaoyao was slightly stunned. He didn't expect there to be so many onlookers. But they had obviously misunderstood. When Jun Xiaoyao was serious, it was normal for him to stay here for 3 years. First King's Palace, I've waited for you for so long. A soft and charming voice that sounded like the cry of an oriole rang out. A fragrant wind blew, and the enchanting Kagura snuggled up to Jun Xiaoyao. Looking at Jun Xiaoyao, who had just come out of a tender home and was now being entangled by a beauty. All the onlookers only had one word in their hearts. F***CK. Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows slightly, and his expression was indifferent. He still had a lot of questions to ask Kagura. He wanted to uncover the secret of the 6 Kings of Destruction. Chapter 1039. Kagura was truly beautiful. She was so beautiful that she could cause the downfall of a city. Her eyes were watery, her eyelashes were long, her nose was straight, and her lips were bright red. Her skin was as soft and smooth as white jade, and it glowed. Her figure was curvy and graceful, and her legs were straight and slender, without a single flaw. In particular, her ample bosom, which was imprinted with a black hexagram, was especially alluring. Her appearance and figure weren't inferior to the Tushan 5 beauties at all. In fact, she had a unique temperament. All the onlookers around were jealous and their eyes were red with envy. However, even though they were jealous, they couldn't help but admire Jun Xiaoyao when they thought of his monstrous talent and peerless appearance. There are too many people here. Let's go somewhere else, Jun Xiaoyao said. Are you going for a one-on-one date? The First King's Palace is such a womanizer. Kagura blinked, and her eyes sparkled. She was extremely charming. Jun Xiaoyao chuckled and didn't say anything. The two of them instantly tore through the void and disappeared. The great barbarian continent, on top of a mountain peak shrouded in clouds. Jun Xiaoyao and Kagura's figures appeared. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand and grabbed. The sand and stones on the ground rolled and gathered, instantly forming an exquisite stone pavilion. Kagura was slightly surprised to see this scene. Although this didn't seem like a major technique, it was still very subtle. However, it was enough to show from the minute details that Jun Xiaoyao's use of laws had reached a level of perfection. Changing the world with a single thought was a technique that only top-level powerhouses could use. Kagura naturally didn't know that Jun Xiaoyao had already created an inner universe. This kind of method was just a small matter. Sit. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was very appropriate. You sit first, and then I'll sit, Kagura said coquettishly. Jun Xiaoyao didn't stand on ceremony and sat down directly. However, in the next instant, Kagura twisted her waist and sat directly on Jun Xiaoyao's lap. A pair of jade-like arms wrapped around Jun Xiaoyao's neck as she exhaled. First King's Palace, do you still have any food left? What? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. What do you think? Kagura's eyes were wet and had an ambiguous light. If I said that I didn't touch the 5 beauties at all, would you believe me? Jun Xiaoyaro was calm and composed. If anyone else was teased by Kagura in such a way, they would probably raise their guns in salute. But for Jun Xiaoyaro himself, people who couldn't even control their own desires wouldn't be able to achieve anything great. His current goal was to investigate the secrets behind the 6 Annihilation Kings, and nothing else. Nothing happened for 3 whole months. Kagura also felt that this was rather inconceivable. Naturally, she did not think that Jun Xiaoyaro was incapable. If the chaotic body was not capable, then no man in the world could be considered capable. This was a wonderful misunderstanding to begin with, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Of course I believe you. After all, First King's Palace is no ordinary man. Kagura nodded slightly. For true heroes, women were always just decorations. I came to find you because I wanted to ask you something about the 6 Annihilation Kings, Jun Xiaoyaro said. First King's Palace, your memories. Kagura's eyes revealed faint confusion. When I woke up, I didn't awaken too many memories, Jun Xiaoyaro said casually. I see. First King's Palace, feel free to ask. I'll tell you everything I know. Kagura smiled. Kagura could understand. After all, when she first woke up, she had also lost many memories. However, the Iza clan behind her had told her some secrets. Are we, the 6 Annihilation Kings, really the kings of destruction personally appointed by the heavens? Or is there an even deeper secret behind us? Jun Xiaoyaro had been wondering about this for a long time. The 6 Annihilation Kings were the kings of destruction who brought endless calamities to the immortal region. Were they really the kings of destruction personally appointed by the heavens? Or was there a hidden mastermind or schemer behind them? Kagura's expression became more serious when she heard this. First King's Palace, although everyone in our world believes that we, the 6 Annihilation Kings, are the kings of destruction personally appointed by the heavens to destroy the immortal region. But in reality, rather than saying that we were appointed by the heavens, it would be more accurate to say that we received orders from an ultimate existence. It was it who personally appointed the 6 Annihilation Kings. Kagura's tone was quite serious, especially when she mentioned it. It. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. The ultimate calamity. When Kagura said this word, thunder instantly rumbled in the sky with a deafening roar. It was as if this was an existence that even the heavens feared. Kagura's face was slightly pale, and there was an unprecedented reverence in her eyes. This reverence was as if she was looking at a god. The ultimate calamity? Jun Xiaoyaro furrowed his eyebrows. Just from the name alone, it was obvious that this was nothing good. What is this, a person or? Jun Xiaoyaro continued to ask. However, Kagura shook her head and said, Nua doesn't know what it is either. It's an indescribable existence that originates from the unspeakable lands. Perhaps some of the old-timers of the ultimate imperial clans in the Avacania lands might know a thing or two. Jun Xiaoyaro was mulling over Kagura's words. Indeed, the foreign side's true mysterious place was precisely unspeakable lands. This was the most mysterious place outside of the foreign side's 10 great provinces. Meanwhile, in the other side, the true peak existences, those ancient and powerful ultimate emperor clans, their ancestral grounds were precisely in unspeakable lands. This was also the reason why Jun Xiaoyaro had to go to the unspeakable lands to investigate. At this moment, a mechanical voice sounded in Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Ding! Congratulations, host. The new check-in location has been refreshed. Please check in at the Avacania realm. Jun Xiaoyaro was not surprised. The Avacania lands were of the utmost importance. He was very curious about what kind of treasures he could sign in for in the Avacania lands. It must not be simple. So, you mean that the one who truly appointed us is not the so-called mandate of heaven, but the ultimate calamity? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Yes and no. Kagura kept him in suspense. Because to us, the ultimate calamity is no different from the will of heaven. Secondly, rather than saying that it was appointed, it would be better to say that the 6 kings of the first generation were all followers of the ultimate calamity's will. Kagura's answer surprised Jun Xiaoyaro once again. In the legends of the foreign side, the 6 kings of destruction that could destroy the celestial realm were actually just followers of the ultimate calamity's will. What kind of existence was the ultimate calamity? How powerful was it? The 6 kings of destruction that had fully matured were unimaginably powerful. They were simply boss-level existences. And what kind of heaven-defying taboo existence was the ultimate calamity that could create the 6 kings of destruction? Could it be an ultimate boss that was even more terrifying than the big boss? Also, Jun Xiaoyaro had always been curious about the origin of the foreign side. After all, the celestial realm resisted the foreign side largely to prevent the invasion of the dark matter. Was there a connection between the dark matter and the ultimate calamity? What was the relationship? Jun Xiaoyaro was clearly here to solve the mystery. But the doubts in his heart increased. Chapter 1040. She seemed to have seen the confusion on Jun Xiaoyao's face. Kagura grinned and said, "Your Highness, you don't have to worry about this kind of thing. The ultimate calamity is an existence that no one can imagine, an indescribable existence. No one knows whether it's a human or some other creature. It might even be a phenomenon or something that might happen." Kagura's words made Jun Xiaoyaro fall into deep thought. It wasn't impossible. The word calamity could also refer to a calamity and not a specific living being. For example, the dark turmoil that was once engraved in ancient history. But if it was just a phenomenon, why did it have its own will and could even appoint the 6 world destruction kings? The ultimate calamity, being able to appoint the 6 world destruction kings, means that it has at least one kind of thinking that belongs to a creature. It is impossible for a phenomenon to have the thoughts and wisdom of a living being. Jun Xiaoyaro had thought things through carefully. He was originally smart and had great wisdom, so he naturally thought about things comprehensively. That's true, but no one can say for sure. Unless it's one of those ultimate emperor clans, a calamity-level undying that has lived for countless years, perhaps they can tell you the answer. Kagura sighed. Calamity-level undying. Jun Xiaoyaro fell silent. That kind of existence was even more terrifying than an undying king, known as a calamity. In the past, when the border was broken and a gap was opened, calamity-level undying figures appeared. How could that kind of existence answer Jun Xiaoyao's question? Besides, even if there was a chance, Jun Xiaoyaro would have to think twice. After all, in front of that kind of existence, Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be exposed. The source, the great calamity of the era, the ultimate calamity, the dark turmoil, the existence buried in Burial Realm, the secret of Realm C. Jun Xiaoyaro faintly felt that these terrifying existences that were even more mysterious and strange than the 7 unfathomable seemed to have some kind of secret connection. He thought of his father, Jun Wuhui. 1 Qi into 3 pure ones, overseeing the alien realm, Burial Realm, and Realm C. Could it be that in the depths of eternal Burial Realm, and the legendary Endless Sea, there was an unimaginable existence like the ultimate calamity of the alien realm? Jun Xiaoyaro felt that his father should know some secrets. Perhaps he was plotting something. It was not without reason that Jun Wuhui had chosen these 3 special locations. The more Jun Xiaoyaro thought about it, the more he felt that he was still far from the truth of this world. The waters were too deep, and there was no way to grasp it. Even Jun Xiaoyaro felt a headache coming on. He also began to admire his own family. To be able to pass down the legacy to this day despite so many hidden threats. The Jun family's background was obvious, and the water was also very deep. However, right now, he was in the other side, so he couldn't borrow the Jun family's power. All of the secrets could only be explored by himself. First Seat King, you don't have to think too much about it. You just need to know that the 6 of us are reincarnated. The ultimate calamity granted us the power of the 6 kings of reincarnation. Even if we die or something happens to us, in the future, someone will awaken and inherit the same fate. The only way to break it is to complete the heavenly mandate of destroying the immortal realms. At that time, the reincarnation cycle of the 6 kings will end. Kagura's tone was gloomy. No, perhaps there is another way. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed slightly. Oh. Kagura was curious. That is, Let the ultimate calamity completely, before he could say the word disappear. Kagura covered Jun Xiaoyao's mouth with her jade hand. First seat king, don't speak nonsense. The consequences may be unimaginable. Kagura's face was pale, and her heart was still beating with fear. Jun Xiaoyao didn't say anything else. In this world, there were indeed taboo existences with great power. Just by reciting their names, they would be able to sense it and cause strange phenomena. However, Jun Xiaoyao believed that with his fateless constitution, the ultimate calamity. Even if the ultimate calamity could sense him, it would be difficult to trace his karma. Even the most powerful existence couldn't do that. If he wasn't so heaven-defying, how could a fateless one be ranked first among the 3,000 constitutions? Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Besides, I have some questions about the ultimate calamity, Jun Xiaoyao said. Let's talk about the main topic. This is also why I didn't let you deal with the fifth king, Kagura said. I'd like to hear more. Jun Xiaoyao's spirits were lifted. To tell the truth, if Kagura hadn't stopped him, he really would have slapped Yun Xiaohei to death. After all, flies were also annoying. Each of the 6 kings has a ultimate calamity. They are not only our personal weapons, but also the key to opening the door to the depths of the Avacania lands. Jun Xiaoyao wasn't too surprised to hear this. He had previously guessed that the ultimate calamity contained some secrets. He didn't expect his guess to be correct. 6 ultimate calamity forbidden artifacts were 6 keys. Only by gathering all 6 keys could one open the door to the depths of the Avacania lands. Kagura waved her jade hand, and a slender katana appeared in her hand. It was 5 feet long and emitted a cold, dark aura. This is Kagura's ultimate calamity forbidden artifact, demonic sword Heaven's Weep. The 6 ultimate calamity forbidden artifacts can only be used as keys by their masters, Kagura explained. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly and looked at the demonic sword in Kagura's hand. God's Weep halberd, demonic sword Heaven's Weep, Mahakala mirror, and 10-tailed heaven annihilation plate. 4 of the 6 ultimate calamity forbidden artifacts had already appeared. What can we get by opening the door to the Avacania lands? Jun Xiaoyao asked. I'm not sure. It might be an inheritance that belongs to us 6 kings, or it might be some other opportunity. It might even be possible to see the ultimate calamity. No one can say for sure. Kagura's words made Jun Xiaoyao's eyes light up. Fortunately, he didn't kill Yun Xiaohei. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explore the depths of the Avacania lands. Kagura feels that the 6 kings will really gather in this great era. At that time, we can go to the Avacania lands and obtain the opportunities inside. After we grow up and destroy the celestial realm, we can enjoy eternal glory. Kagura's eyes revealed a look of longing. At that time, the celestial realm would be destroyed, and the destiny that belonged to the 6 kings would also be over. They would be completely free from the destiny and wouldn't have to reincarnate again and again. She could also be with the first king that she admired forever. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep, but he didn't say anything. It was impossible for the celestial realm to be destroyed. As long as he was here, it was impossible. It wasn't that Jun Xiaoyao was merciful and wanted to be a hero. It was because the Jun family, the Jiang family, the Emperor Imperial Court, and those he cared about were all in the celestial realm. Without the celestial realm, they would lose their foothold. Besides, in addition to him, Su Hongyi also vowed to follow him to death. Among the 6 kings, 2 were spies. It would be strange if they succeeded in the end. Thank you for answering my questions. It seems that next, we just need to wait for the remaining 2 kings to appear. Jun Xiaoyao smiled. Then, the first king's palace, next, Kagura was still sitting on Jun Xiaoyao's lap. Her jade-like arms were wrapped around his neck, and her beautiful eyes were filled with pink seduction. I have to return to the Ars Academy. I'll look for you in the future. Jun Xiaoyao got up and gently pushed Kagura away. First King's Palace, you. Kagura was stunned. Was he treating her as a tool to search for information? Was he just going to throw her aside after using her? Thank you. It was a pleasant conversation. Jun Xiaoyao flashed a modest, gentlemanly smile. He then took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood. Kagura was stunned. Then, she stomped her jade-like feet in annoyance. First King's Palace, next time, I won't let you go, Kagura muttered to herself. Then, she seemed to think of something, and her expression became serious. There was one more thing that she hadn't told Jun Xiaoyao. Rumor has it that when the 6 kings appear, there will be a leader who will command them. The leader is the Dark Devil Monarch. Is this a legend or a fact? Because the 6 kings had never appeared at the same time, Kagura didn't know whether this legend was true or not. Kagura couldn't determine whether it was true or not, so she didn't tell Jun Xiaoyao. She didn't want to mislead him. She also knew that with the first king's pride, he wouldn't submit to anyone. I can only hope that the legend about the Dark Devil Monarch is false. Otherwise, the first king and the Dark Devil Monarch wouldn't be so harmonious. Kagura sighed inwardly. Chapter 1041. In the void, Jun Xiaoyao's figure appeared. There was too much information in this conversation with Kagura. Jun Xiaoyao had to organize his thoughts properly. And he had to plan what to do next. Up until now, Jun Xiaoyao had come into contact with more and more things. The karma behind it was also getting bigger and bigger. It even involved the origin of the foreign realm and the origin of the dark matter. This was a taboo mystery to begin with. There were many great secrets and terrors in this world that couldn't be explored. Since ancient times, it was unknown how many top powerhouses had been involved in all kinds of mysteries because of curiosity. In the end, they didn't even know how they died. Jun Xiaoyao's actions were simply dancing on the tip of a knife. If he wasn't careful, he might be consigned to eternal damnation. And at this time, the benefits of being a fateless person were displayed. At least, it was difficult for karma to involve Jun Xiaoyao. Although I'm a transmigrator, I'm a fateless person who has jumped out of the 3 realms, not in the 5 elements, not tainted by karma, and not fallen into the mortal world. But I still have to be cautious. It will be troublesome if I screw up. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were as deep as the starry sky. It was hard to imagine that Jun Xiaoyao, who was only a supreme, had already begun to investigate these ancient mysteries. One had to know that there were many taboo mysteries that even the great emperors kept a secret and didn't dare to easily get involved in karma. Next, the first thing is to wait for the remaining 2 kings to appear. I don't think it will be too long. After the 2 kings appear, it's about time to head to the unspeakable place. Moreover, there's still a sign-in opportunity there. But before that, I still need to make a trip to the Nirvana Emperor clan to investigate the karma of the ghost-masked woman. Maybe there will be an unexpected gain. Let's return to the Ars Academy first and see how Xian Yu's injuries are. Let her lead me there. Jun Xiaoyao was planning step by step. The only thing that made him feel a little helpless was the whereabouts of his father, Jun Wuhui. Jun Wuhui completely disappeared after the battle with the Scarlet Owl King at the border. He was certain that he didn't return to the immortal realm. But there was no news of Jun Wuhui in the foreign realm. It was as if he had completely evaporated. There were 2 possibilities. First, Jun Wuhui wasn't in the other side at all. Second, Jun Wuhui hid himself extremely well, to the extent where there might be foreign creatures secretly shielding him. Don't think it's impossible. In the immortal region, there were spies from the other side like the Parameter organization. In the other side, there would naturally be some spies from Immortal Domain. However, these spies were too well hidden. Jun Xiaoyao had no way of knowing about them. If the first one is unlikely, then it's probably the second one. Jun Xiaoyao made a judgment. The reason was simple. He felt that Jun Wuhui must have his reasons for disappearing at this time. Even the battle between Jun Wuhui and the Crimson Owl King might be within his plans. Jun Xiaoyao was very curious. What exactly was Jun Wuhui's plan? What was his goal? I haven't seen this father of mine since I was born. I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of disturbance father will stir up in this foreign world. Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. Brothers fighting a tiger, father and son going into battle. He was looking forward to the moment when he would fight side by side with Jun Wuhui. Next, Jun Xiaoyao prepared to return to Ars Academy to check on Xian Yu's situation. Suddenly, A strange look flashed past Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes. Because he smelled a somewhat familiar aura. It was the aura of incense. As mentioned before, when Zhang Xiaoyao was with Luo Xiangling, he deliberately put a trace of incense on his body. In this way, Luo Xiangling's body would naturally be imperceptibly stained with a trace of incense. This was to make it easier for Zhang Xiaoyao to check if Luo Xiangling was secretly peeping at him like an idiot. After all, Zhang Xiaoyao also wanted privacy. If a pseudo-immortal really wanted to hide, Zhang Xiaoyao really wouldn't be able to detect it. After sensing this trace of aura, Zhang Xiaoyao naturally knew that Luo Xiangling, this little vinegar, was here. She still liked to secretly observe him. Zhang Xiaoyao didn't show any abnormality on the surface, and he didn't point out Luo Xiangling. Otherwise, wouldn't Luo Xiangling be suspicious of how Zhang Xiaoyao detected her presence? Soon, this trace of aura disappeared. Obviously, Luo Xiangling didn't want to show herself in front of him for the sake of her reputation. As a pseudo-immortal, this bit of reputation was still important. Sigh, I just solved the problem of the 5 foxes, and now I realize that this is the real problem. Zhang Xiaoyao had a headache. Those 5 foxes, it didn't matter. Anyway, they couldn't push Zhang Xiaoyao down even if they wanted to. But Luo Xiangling was different. She was a pseudo-immortal. If she really attacked, Zhang Xiaoyao really wouldn't be able to resist. Forget it, I'll go back to the Ars Academy and comfort her. Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head slightly. He swore that he would never hug the thigh of a beautiful auntie again. Sooner or later, he would have to pay for what he did. It didn't take long for Zhang Xiaoyao to return to the Ars Academy. His return undoubtedly caused a huge sensation again. In the state of Heaven Tomb, he killed one of the 7 young emperors, the God Devourer Prince. In the matchmaking convention, he completely defeated Kai Hongyu. Even the 10-tailed black fox of destruction, one of the 6 kings, was no match for Zhang Xiaoyao. The 5 princesses of Tushan tied a red string with him at the same time. The most ridiculous thing was that they even tied a red string with Tushan Mingfei. In the end, they only came out of the palace after a full 3 months. Each of these things was enough to cause a sensation. Not to mention that all of these things were concentrated on Zhang Xiaoyao at the same time. Lord Ars is our role model. Killing princes, torturing kings, winning beauties, Lord Xiaoyao is our role model and our belief. The disciples of the Ars Academy could be said to have all become Zhang Xiaoyao's fanatical fans. The fact that Zhang Xiaoyao was in the same academy as them was a source of pride and joy to them. Some female disciples even became Zhang Xiaoyao's diehard fans. They kept screaming, saying things like "My brother ked me, I'll only feel sorry for my brother." Zhang Xiaoyao smiled at all these. "Ah, Lord Xiaoyao is smiling at me. Shut up, bitch, he's smiling at me." Zhang Xiaoyao suddenly came up with a new idea when he saw how they reacted. The Church of Destiny happened to be recruiting believers. With his popularity in the foreign realm, as an idol, believers would come rolling in. As for treating fans like leeks. Come on, which idol didn't treat their fans like leeks? Of course, this was just Zhang Xiaoyao's random imagination. After that, Su Hongyi, who learned that Zhang Xiaoyao had returned, came to welcome Zhang Xiaoyao. Su Hongyi had no objections to Zhang Xiaoyao's marriage. Her identity was Zhang Xiaoyao's follower. She had no right to comment on her master's actions, not even the right to be jealous. Zhang Xiaoyao was her sky, the master she swore to follow. "Is everything fine at the academy? Where's the Luo King?" Zhang Xiaoyao asked. He wanted to find the Luo King and comfort him. Even if it was a pet cat, he had to pet it often and smooth its fur, right? "Master, not long ago, the Luo King announced that he was going into seclusion and won't see anyone for the time being," Su Hongyi said respectfully. "Oh." Zhang Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Was she sulking, or was she really jealous? Zhang Xiaoyao didn't look for her again. It was impossible for him to be a bootlicker, not in this lifetime. Just as well. I'll use the remaining time to study the soul book. But before that, I have to find Shen Yu. Zhang Xiaoyao came to his own attic. He pushed open a door. A slender girl in a black silk dress was sitting cross-legged inside. Her facial features were exquisite and picturesque. There was a blood-tear mole at the corner of her eye that made her even more charming. Under her snow-white neck was an exquisite collarbone that was like a butterfly's wings. There was a scarlet-red spider lily mark on it, making her look strange and seductive. Who else could it be but Xian Yu? Have you recovered from your injuries? Zhang Xiaoyao asked gently. Xian Yu was stunned. This was the first time Zhang Xiaoyao had spoken to her with such a gentle attitude. Zhang Xiaoyao's attitude towards her had always been cold because she had injured Jiang Xingyi. Yes. I have to thank you for the chaos blood essence. Otherwise, my injuries wouldn't have healed so quickly, Xian Yu whispered. That's good. Zhang Xiaoyao smiled faintly. It was also time for Xian Yu to show her worth. However, Xian Yu was a little dazed when she saw Zhang Xiaoyao's handsome smile, which made him look like a celestial being. This was the first time Zhang Xiaoyao had smiled at her. It was a beautiful smile that was as dazzling as the sun. It also gave people an inexplicable sense of calmness. Xian Yu, who had lived a miserable life and had suffered a lot, could not help but immerse herself in the warmth and stability. Chapter 1042. Why? Are you thinking of your brother again? Seeing Xian Yu staring at him, the smile on Zhang Xiaoyao's face slowly disappeared. He mistakenly thought that Xian Yu thought of him as her deceased brother again. He was not anyone's substitute. However, to his surprise, Xian Yu shook her head. No, I'm looking at you. Zhang Xiaoyao was stunned. When did this girl learn how to flirt with men? It seems that you've gradually gotten rid of the past, Zhang Xiaoyao said. Xian Yu frowned and remained silent for a while. After talking to you before, I've thought it through. I've been trapped in an illusory obsession, looking for someone who might not exist. I'm deceiving myself. Xian Yu smiled bitterly. She knew that the Nirvana organization and the woman named Hua Lian were probably lying to her. But she was willing to be deceived. For an illusory promise of reincarnation. It's good that you've thought it through. Life doesn't always go your way. The best way to remember your brother is to look forward and live well, Zhang Xiaoyao said lightly. Xian Yu was stunned. Zhang Xiaoyao's words seemed to have an inexplicable power. She had been bound by memories and had never been free. She had never thought about her own life. But now, Zhang Xiaoyao asked her to look forward, which meant that he wanted her to take control of her life in her own hands. Xian Yu choked for a moment. She didn't expect Zhang Xiaoyao to have such a warm side. He looked indifferent on the outside, but there was a fire in his heart, which made her feel a long-lost warmth and peace. Zhang Xiaoyao saw the subtle changes in Xian Yu's eyes. This was the effect he wanted. He wanted Xian Yu to be used by him. Xian Yu and Su Hongyi would be two sharp knives under his command. Well, I'm here to tell you that I may be preparing to go to the Nirvana tribe. I hope you can lead the way and tell me some clues about the Nirvana tribe, Zhang Xiaoyao said. Xian Yu nodded her head. Even her life was saved by Zhang Xiaoyao. What reason did she have not to help? But now, the blue spider lilies might have a very strong opinion of me. Mystic Moon reminded. She was supposed to be executed by Prince Bayan. In the end, she didn't die, but Prince Bayan did. From this, one could see how the blue spider lilies would react. It doesn't matter. I'd like to see who has the guts, Zhang Xiaoyao said calmly. Now, he had another identity. Tushan's son-in-law. The nine-tailed king of Tushan had even bestowed him with a red string of marriage. There was also the Shanao of Beach, as well as the mysterious immortal that he had created with the evil thoughts of the gods. This meant that Zhang Xiaoyao had 3 immortal kings behind him. Who would dare to provoke him? I never thought that I would be able to rely on my background to suppress others in the other side. Zhang Xiaoyao felt that it was a bit strange just thinking about it. His status in the mystic realm was unparalleled. His identity as the son of God of the Zhang family was awe-inspiring. After that, in the other side, Zhang Xiaoyao lost the protection of his background, so he had to plan carefully step by step. Now, he also had such a strong background. This was enough to prove that Zhang Xiaoyao didn't just rely on the Zhang family. Even if he was alone, it was enough for him to succeed and become famous. This was a real anomaly, a peerless genius. Zhun Xiaoyaro returned to his training ground after he was done with Xian Yu. Because the entire dragon vein in the other side was monopolized by Zhun Xiaoyaro and refined into the inner universe. So, for him, anywhere was a paradise. Finally, I can start to cultivate the soul book. Zhun Xiaoyaro took out the soul book. As one of the 9 great heavenly books, the soul book's mysteries were endless. Even if Kai Hongyu was taught by the Kaixiao king, he couldn't comprehend much. During the competition, he didn't even have time to use the soul book's mysteries before he was defeated by Zhun Xiaoyaro in a few moves. Let me see what's going on. Zhun Xiaoyaro opened the soul book and immersed his mind into it. Each of the ancient characters was like an ancient star that was rotating, releasing light and mysterious. Each ancient character seemed to be deconstructing the soul and exploring the mysteries of the primordial spirit and spirit. Zhun Xiaoyaro valued the soul book very much. Because the primordial spirit was the most important thing in cultivation. If the primordial spirit was cultivated to a certain level, it could even leave the body and roam the universe. In a single thought, one's thoughts were as numerous as the sand in the Ganges River. It was neither created nor destroyed, neither increased nor decreased, immortal and indestructible. Of course, that was already an extremely high level of soul realm. Zhun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit was still at the boundless level. It was at the level of quantitative change and hadn't really reached the level of qualitative change. However, Zhun Xiaoyaro believed that with the soul book, it was only a matter of time before his primordial spirit transformed. He could even complete the preliminary cultivation of the primordial spirit of 3 lives. Following that, Zhun Xiaoyaro immersed himself in cultivation. On the other side, deep in the academy, a quasi-immortal was in a good mood. It was none other than Fufeng of Gojosian. After learning that Luo Xiangling was in seclusion and refused to meet Zhun Xiaoyaro, Fufeng of Gojosian was in an extremely good mood. This junior is still too inexperienced. How can the Luo king's feelings be played with so easily? Since he's married to the Tushan 5 beauties, this person can no longer have any contact with the Luo king. Fufeng of Gojosian smiled faintly. Zhun Xiaoyaro had always been a thorn in his side, a thorn in his flesh. He couldn't understand why Luo Xiangling would take a fancy to Zhun Xiaoyaro. How did he lose? And now, the news of Zhun Xiaoyaro and the Tushan 5 beauties fighting for 3 months had spread throughout the entire other domain. Fufeng of Gojosian believed that Luo Xiangling had completely given up. Since this kid isn't a threat for the time being, let him be. It's very troublesome to touch him. Fufeng of Gojosian muttered to himself. With the protection of the Shanao of Beach, it was impossible for him to touch Zhun Xiaoyaro. At most, he could play some tricks in the dark. Purple Bamboo Forest was quiet and secluded. Few people came here. In a quiet and secluded courtyard, a woman who was pitilessly beautiful like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water was sitting cross-legged by herself. Autumn water as divine jade as bone, azure long hair poured down like a waterfall. There was not a single blemish on her fair and delicate face. Her long eyelashes made her watery eyes shimmer. She gave off a feeling of gentleness like water and glistening like jade. She was the Luo king, Luo Xiangling. However, at this moment, she couldn't calm down. No matter how much she wanted to immerse herself in cultivation. As long as she closed her eyes, she seemed to see the woman sitting on Zhun Xiaoyao's lap. That's right. Luo Xiangling saw it. Previously, after dealing with the God Devourer Prince, Zhun Xiaoyaro went to the matchmaking convention alone. At that time, Luo Xiangling still had some resentment in her heart. However, she also believed that Zhun Xiaoyaro wouldn't go to the matchmaking convention. In the end, she heard the news that Zhun Xiaoyaro had not only become Tushan's son-in-law. Moreover, he had married 5 women at once. At that time, Luo Xiangling's heart was in a mess. However, she was the Luo king after all. She still had to maintain her dignity. Therefore, she waited patiently. Who would have thought that there would be news that Zhun Xiaoyaro and the 5 beauties had been in the bridal chamber for 3 months? This time, Luo Xiangling couldn't hold back anymore. She went directly to the great barbarian state. With her quasi-immortal ability, she could naturally sense Zhun Xiaoyao's whereabouts. Then, She saw the scene of Kagura sitting on Jun Xiaoyao's lap, hugging his neck and chatting intimately. Luo Xiangling watched from afar. She didn't know what to feel. After that, the only thing that made Luo Xiangling slightly relieved was that Jun Xiaoyao didn't have anything to do with that woman. Instead, he left directly. Luo Xiangling approached, wanting to ask about Jun Xiaoyao. However, due to her dignity, she didn't show up in the end and left directly. He came back, but he didn't come to find me, Luo Xiangling muttered to herself. Suddenly, she felt a sense of loss. Although she released the news that she was in seclusion. But then again, Jun Xiaoyao should have come to take a look as well. However, Jun Xiaoyao didn't come. This made Luo Xiangling unable to calm down. Am I being pretentious? But I'm still a little angry. Luo Xiangling actually felt a little wronged. Her long dormant heartstrings were touched by Jun Xiaoyao. However, in the blink of an eye, Jun Xiaoyao was in the bridal chamber with other women. Moreover, there were 5 of them. There was even Kagura who made that kind of ambiguous gesture. As long as it was a woman, she would probably feel uncomfortable. It was really difficult for Luo Xiangling not to sulk. In fact, as long as Jun Xiaoyao came to explain, even if he really was in the bridal chamber, Luo Xiangling would have accepted it. However, Jun Xiaoyao didn't even come. He was like a scumbag who ignored women after their honeymoon period. Luo Xiangling, who had been single for many years, was confused about her feelings for the first time. Chapter 1043. Did I do something wrong? Luo Xiangling couldn't help but ask herself. She felt very lost. She had no experience in love, and Jun Xiaoyao was the first person of the opposite sex to open her heart. But now, Luo Xiangling was actually a little afraid. She was afraid that she and Jun Xiaoyao would really break up like this and become strangers. If that was really the case, Luo Xiangling couldn't imagine her emotions at that time. She was afraid that her heart would really die. Just as Luo Xiangling was feeling uneasy. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, remained in his training ground, undisturbed. With his monstrous talent, although it was impossible for him to comprehend the soul book too quickly, it was definitely not slow either. In the blink of an eye, another few months had passed. As Jun Xiaoyao went into seclusion to cultivate, it seemed that the entire 10 provinces of the foreign realm had fallen into a short period of silence. However, Jun Xiaoyao's various deeds were still circulating in the 10 provinces, causing countless people to take delight in talking about them. Jun Xiaoyao had also become the faith of many men and the object of worship of many women. On Tuoba Yu's side, the preaching was going very smoothly. With Jun Xiaoyao's endorsement, almost no one was blind enough to stop them. In addition, Tuoba Yu was also very smart. He wouldn't go to those big royal and quasi-emperor clans to preach. He would only go to those slave clans and preach among them. Therefore, the number of believers of the god of fate and creation was increasing exponentially every day. There were too many slave clans and general clans in the foreign realm, like ants. This was a group that was easy to overlook and extremely large in number. According to Tuoba Yu's calculations, until now, the number of believers who piously believed in the god of fate and creation had exceeded 100 million. And the number of creatures who cultivated the Tao Heart demonic seed art was about to reach 10 million. In addition, there were also the Blood Spirit Royal Clan, Blue Ghost Royal Clan, Blade Arm Shura Clan, and other royal clans that had been subdued by Jun Xiaoyao in the previous battle. Now, they were also believing in the god of fate and creation. In addition to the Ice Spirit Royal Clan and other forces. Faith had already begun to spread among the royal clans ranked at the bottom. Jun Xiaoyao could sense that the power of faith in the Innerverse was increasing exponentially every day. It had even converged into a vast ocean of faith. The dazzling golden sea of faith that was emitting a radiant light surged through the void of the Innerverse, creating huge waves that reached the heavens. It could be said that if this sea of faith was seen by the ancient Orchid sect or the Western Paradise sect, they would definitely be envious. After all, the power of faith was the foundation upon which these imperishable sects relied for their survival. In the middle of the sea of faith was the seed of faith. Now, the seed of faith was like the sun, emitting a dazzling brilliance. However, Jun Xiaoyao did not have the time to care about this. This was because he was currently using the Soul Book to break through the bottleneck of the Three Lives Immortal Sutra and condense his future primordial spirit. In Jun Xiaoyao's mind, there were 3 Dao flowers, representing the past, present, and future. On the flower of the past and the flower of the present, there were 2 lifelike figures sitting cross-legged, like miniature versions of Jun Xiaoyao. They were the primordial spirits of the past and present. As for the 3 lives primordial spirits, he was still missing the primordial spirit of the future. This was also the most difficult primordial spirit to condense. Even with Jun Xiaoyao's monstrous talent, it was very difficult to condense it before he obtained a great opportunity like the Soul Book. But now, with the Soul Book, Jun Xiaoyao was ready to break through in one fell swoop. Rumble. Jun Xiaoyao's mind seemed to be opening up a new world. A huge amount of primordial spirit power surged like a tide. The primordial spirit level was divided into ordinary, exceptional, extraordinary, boundless, eternal, void turbulent, immortal, and moksha. Jun Xiaoyao's original primordial spirit level was at the boundless level. Even among supremes, it was already an extremely high level. Now, the power of his primordial spirit was skyrocketing. In the end, his soul realm was about to boil, and the light of his primordial spirit shone like the sun. Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit level had already reached the peak of the boundless level. This was already the absolute limit that he could cultivate to in the supreme realm. Any higher would be the eternal sand level. With a thought, his primordial spirit was as vast as the sands of the Ganges River. Originally, the primordial spirit was considered relatively weak compared to the physical body. But if it reached the eternal sand level, it would be extremely difficult to completely destroy the primordial spirit. With a thought, the primordial spirit would scatter like the sands of the Ganges River. It wouldn't be easy to destroy it completely. But as long as a little bit of the primordial spirit remained, it could be recovered. It could be said that there weren't many eternal sand-level primordial spirits among the 7 supremes. It's fine. When my cultivation increases in the future and I break through to the eternal sand level, it will be a matter of time. The most important thing now is the future primordial spirit. Jun Xiaoyao held his breath and focused. He began to use the power of the perfected boundless primordial spirit to condense the future primordial spirit. In Jun Xiaoyao's mind, lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and flames burned. This was extremely terrifying. One had to know that the primordial spirit was also known as the yin spirit, and it was of the yin attribute. What it was most afraid of were lightning, flames, and other extreme yang powers. But now, in Jun Xiaoyao's mind, a scene of lightning flashing and a sea of fire surging appeared. It was a fatal blow to the primordial spirit. Jun Xiaoyao's past primordial spirit and present primordial spirit emitted a bright light. Like 2 young gods, they were sitting cross-legged and chanting scriptures. The 3 lives primordial spirits were unleashed to the extreme by Jun Xiaoyao. For other prodigies of the same generation, this kind of tribulation was almost certain death. It was impossible for the primordial spirit to survive this kind of lightning and fire tribulation. But for Jun Xiaoyao, this was a kind of tempering. It was tempering his primordial spirit into steel, allowing his primordial spirit to completely transform. Gradually, on the flower of the future, a misty fog began to flow. A speck of light began to be born and shine. That was the light that belonged to the future primordial spirit. Jun Xiaoyao held his breath and focused his attention on that speck of future light. Suddenly, he seemed to see some fragmented scenes through that speck of future light. In that fragmented scene, the heavens didn't give way to the heavens. The earth didn't recover. Everything was fragmented. Countless living beings had fallen, forming a river of blood that flowed in the universe. There were tens of thousands of white bones, floating corpses everywhere. Jun Xiaoyao also saw that some of the immortal domain's lands had collapsed, splitting into many small pieces. There were even huge corpses floating in the universe, emitting a residual might close to that of an emperor. Those were the corpses of quasi-emperors. Even someone as calm as Jun Xiaoyao was slightly shocked when he caught a glimpse of what was happening in that corner. The immortal domain's lands were shattered. The corpses of quasi-emperors drifted in the universe. Billions of living beings were bathed in blood. That was a scene of doomsday. What's going on? These fragmented scenes were beyond Zhang Xiaoyao's expectations. Could it be that the foreign realm broke through the border in the war between the two realms? Zhang Xiaoyao was trying to figure it out. The condensation of the future primordial spirit actually allowed him to see a corner of the future. No, that's not right. Zhang Xiaoyao kept feeling that something was wrong. That kind of calamity and chaos didn't seem to be a foreign invasion. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyao suddenly focused his mind. This was because he saw a familiar figure in a fragment of the future. The beauty in white clothes stained with blood smiled. Jiang Shengyi. Jiang Shengyi's eyes were sad and filled with endless longing as she looked in his direction. It was as if she was looking at him from the space-time between the present and the future. Xiaoyao, if it's for you, I'm willing. Just let me be stupid this time. As Jiang Shengyi spoke, a jade-like hand pressed on her chest. Her figure turned into specks of light as if she had become a feather. A heart that was beating vigorously, wrapped in endless immortal radiance, was personally taken out by Jiang Shengyi. Every time the heart beat, countless great Tao rules of the universe would be shaken. 12 apertures of the immortal heart,